Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order. With me, I have Councilor Juan Anderson-Burgos. I'm Councilor Linda Vacon, and Councilor Joe McGiverin has joined us tonight to make a quorum so that we can begin the meeting on time. When a committee member joins us to form a quorum, then Joe will get to watch the from.
My pinch hitting batting average is about 450.
So I'm very grateful to Joe so that you won't all be held up waiting. And so in interest of that, where's my, not having any minutes from previous meetings, I'm entertaining a motion relative to an item that is not on the agenda tonight, which is the Boston Bud Factory. That is a public hearing that was continued from our last meeting on the 13th to tonight. However, it accidentally did not get on the agenda, and there's open issues on that application anyway. So I'm asking for motion to open the public hearing on the Boston Bud that was continued to tonight.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so now I would ask for a motion to continue the public hearing on the Boston Bud Factory to December 11th at 6:30.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the Boston Bud Factory application is continued to December 11th at 6:30 p.m. And Ryan has communicated with the applicant relative to this, so they are aware. Thank you. So we have a lot of people in the room tonight on our item number 4.
Make a motion to proceed out of order to item number 4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So item number 4 is a public hearing, ordered that a permanent reconfiguration of Sunset and/or Ashley Road or other streets in the neighborhood be considered once the temporary pilot project is completed. So I need a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we are now in public hearing on the Ashley Sunset neighborhood issue. Everybody who lives in the neighborhood experienced the blocks being put at the end of Ashley and Sunset for a period of about, Mike, you can come on in. For a period of about 3 to 4 weeks, and now they have been down for approximately a week plus. So this is the second step from the original hearing that was for the temporary measure, which has occurred. And so now what we're interested in is hearing the feedback, ideas, suggestion, pros, cons from those of you who wish to speak tonight. Before I open up the mic to the public, I just want to give Mike McManus, our superintendent, an opportunity if he has any comments he'd like to make, or if you'd rather just hear from the public first.
I'd like to hear from the public.
Okay, great. So, where did my sheet go? So just to try to move things, I'm going to ask folks to come up to the microphone, give your name and address, and try to limit your comments to a minute. We'll circle back if we need to, but it is highly likely we will be having a continuation of this public hearing. So we want to hear from everybody who wishes to speak, but I doubt we're going to be in a place to make any recommendations tonight. So first on the list, I have Brian Powell. I'm sorry? Well, that's all.
Brian Powell, 10 Sunset Road. First of all, I'd like to thank the DPW. I was at the last meeting. They said they would put the stuff up, paint the lines. The very next day, they were doing that. The blocking of Sunset, which is run to where I'm at, right at the corner, was awesome. It changed the traffic pattern. It became a neighborhood again. We weren't dealing with the 50 to 60 mile an hour. Taking the right-hand turn off of Westfield Road at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. They were up for 3 weeks.
Is the microphone on? I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Oh,
to
make
interrupt
sure
it.
you
Yeah,
pull,
make
there's
sure
a little button
I
on
don't
the
think it's
side.
on.
We just got word.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right, Brian Powell, 10 Sunset Road. I'd like to thank the DPW for and so forth. But the blocking of the street, it was awesome. You know, like I said, when we came here, we have to try something, see how the flow goes. And it looked like it was there. I came home several parts of the day for busy times to see if I left my driveway to go out the others, and I had no trouble going that way. Getting out onto Homestead.
Okay.
Whether I was going right or left. The painted lines, they were open all the time. As soon as the things came down just before the snowstorm, the traffic was right back up, flying on the street, coming up. You know, again, I think that it made our neighborhood a neighborhood again. I found that we don't really need the exit on Sunset. I'm not sure about the Ashley side. They can speak those down there, but the Sunset side with that light backup and everything, it wasn't there. Cars could turn around, come down and turned around. Trucks could come down and turn around with the S-turns, so they weren't impeded. I was amazed at how many people went past the dead end sign and still came up the street. And turned around in the driveway. So that was probably the biggest complaint, was turning around in our driveways. I'd love to see it go permanent. I also think it would increase our property values. So I think they're going down with the traffic flow that we have.
Okay, thanks a lot. Jim Wildman?
Jim Wildman, 10 Pinchin Road. I just want to say I've been in the neighborhood a few years, and actually one of the first days I moved in, I noticed that cars were coming down Sterling, probably 40, 50 miles an hour, going right through into Pearson, no stop sign. And since then, since I've been in the neighborhood, I've noticed it just get continually worse. And again, when he says 40, 50 miles an hour, he's not exaggerating. This neighborhood's also in a transition where there's a lot more kids in the neighborhood now. There's a lot younger families coming in. Myself, I have a 4-year-old. My neighbors have young kids. And the type of people that are coming through our neighborhood are not driving the 15 miles an hour posted. They're doing 40, 50 miles an hour. And if you say something to them, they stop the car, they get out, they yell at you, they flip you off. We've had people, we've been out with the neighbors who have actually gotten out of the car and said, "Who wants to fight?" You know, completely absurd. Now, when the barriers went up, that traffic went away. It was fantastic. This year, trick-or-treating with our kids for Halloween was safe. Last year, we were dodging cars. And I'm not saying that other neighborhoods don't have that problem, but when you're on a dark street, people are coming down at 40 miles an hour, yeah, it's very scary, especially on a side street. The other thing that we noticed, and some of the neighbors on Facebook said, was when the barriers went up, people were driving over our neighbors' lawns to avoid turning around, going back out on the homestead. So that's the type of people that we have coming through here, not people who are respectful of the speed limit, not people who are respectful of the neighborhood. And I agree 100%. I love using Sunset to go left, to go out to Westfield. Is it an inconvenience? Yes. But if it makes the neighborhood safer, I have no problem going out on Homestead. We used Homestead the whole time. Again, we had no problems getting out with any of the boxes being painted. So in my opinion, I thought everything worked really well. Talking with a bunch of the neighbors, we all felt a lot safer. So I'm all in favor of closing this off personally.
Thank you. Dave Tenney? I'm good right now, thank you. Okay. Paul Gubala?
Hi, my name's Paul Gabal. I live at 42 Pinchin. I guess like anything, you get used to the situation. And I've had comments from people who come through the neighborhood, like the mailman and that, saying, wow, what a change in the neighborhood. It was a good thing. I can't speak for Clayton or Sunset or Ashley. I just wish there was something that could be opened up on weekends, but I know that's not something that could happen. One thing I would want to suggest, and I don't know if you want to try it, but make Ashley one-way coming in. But I'm not saying leave, that's a very wide intersection there. What I'm saying is put some barriers up with some signs, but leave it open so you can come in that way, one way coming in only. It avoids the people who are trying to cut through coming out to go that way. But I just think it gives us another opportunity of way of coming in to our own neighborhood. It's not really that bad once you turn on the Homestead to take a right, but it's just something I'd ask you if you wanted to consider. But if the people on Ashley are against it, then that's good too. You know, they live there, they're the ones who deal with it. But it was just a thought. And just one other thing about what Jim said, that stop sign, it needs to be put in. Because after the barriers went down, sure enough, I'm coming over Pinchin, here comes a car flying through, hits the brakes, it stopped almost in the intersection when it saw me, but something needs to be done there permanently too as far as a stop sign goes.
Thank you. Jerry Connell? Connor Bevan?
Good evening. My name is Connor Bevan. I live on 24 Ashley Road, so right on the corner of Westfield and Ashley. I've relocated back to Western Mass and selected Holyoke because I'm born and raised here. I selected this neighborhood because I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up by HEC. I used to play and run in the reservoir. I have a 1.5-year-old son, and within 6 months, my wife and I had discussions of moving, either neighborhoods or cities because of the speed and traffic. I asked the city council to make a decision for the simple fact that we're sending mixed messaging to not only residents in West Holyoke that use the cut-through, but also non-tax-paying residents that are Southampton, Montgomery, and Westfield. These are the individuals that aren't as respectful as neighbors in Holyoke. So like all change, I know that it's going to be some inconvenience. It's inconvenience for myself and my family because we use the Ashley exit quite frequently. I'd much rather, as Jim mentioned, have a safer neighborhood. 90 and 91 are the crossroads of Holyoke. We can easily find change and make new traffic flow patterns if individuals take one additional exit to go to West Holyoke or one additional exit on the Pike to get to Westfield, Southampton. And also, I just would also like to comment that a lot of the commercial traffic, which would be driven by businesses, are not Holyoke-based businesses. That commercial traffic, there's no commercial need from Westfield Road and Ashley up to the corners of Westfield and Holyoke. So those 8-wheelers that clog up a lot of the traffic flow, they're not necessary. And that will eliminate a lot of traffic over time. I know that there's going to be some pushback, but I would urge the city council to make a decision as soon as possible so our younger families in the neighborhood can decide on their residents when they're bringing up their children. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Demers?
Hi, I live at 38 Ashley Road, so close to the 202. And I loved it when the barriers were there. It made the neighborhood a neighborhood again. It was quiet. It was safe. The kids on my street were outside playing. I disagree with leaving part of Ashley open because you're going to get the traffic coming from Westfield and West Holyoke in the morning, cutting through. And I've almost been rear-ended backing out of my driveway on many occasions for people cutting through. I mean, other people wouldn't know that, but when you live close to that area, that's what has occurred. So I like the barriers up.
Thank you. Lisa and Andrew?
Lisa O'Brien, 75 Clayton Road. I'm very nervous.
Okay.
I signed because I thought it was a sign-in sheet, but
You don't have to speak if you don't want to, but we're...
no, but I want to. I want to say it's been great, and I'm all for it. And I think if you got a raise of hands here, most people would say yes. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. Donna Dupont?
Hi, Donna DuPont, 28 Mason Road. I just wanted to ask a question. Has the city determined a speed limit for the whole section up in Goodyear Park?
I'm going to defer to our superintendent, Mike McManus, on that.
I don't believe we've done any special speed study for Goodyear Park.
So that would mean it is 30
It would
at
be
this time?
30, yeah,
or
unless it's
25?
posted. Unless it's
Or is-
posted. If it's posted, then a speed study was done before I started with the city.
Okay, so if there is a posted sign, then the posting would prevail. And we recently passed the thing about the 25 miles an hour, but I don't know if we've implemented that yet.
We haven't yet. We notified the state that it's been passed, and we're waiting to hear from the state of approval. And then once that happens, the statutory speed limit within the city for residential and commercial areas would be 25 miles per hour.
So we are in process of having that be the standard, whereas historically, and right this minute, it's 30 if it's not otherwise posted.
But if it is posted, that is the de facto speed limit for that
Right.
road.
It's come to my attention that Lincoln Street is 25, yet they have sidewalks. So that's something that needs to be considered also, is the fact that we don't have sidewalks.
Right, but what Mr. McManus was trying to say is that we're in process so that all streets will be the 25 as the unposted speed limit once we get through the process of changing it for the entire city, whether there's sidewalks or not, for the side streets. That's what we're in the process of doing. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
okay, thank you. Kevin O'Brien?
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Brien. I'm from 18 Clayton Road. Actually, I noticed a big difference. It was great to have it blocked off. I'm right at the beginning of Clayton, so I'm right by the four-way stop sign, which we might as well say it's non-existent because they don't. They come through Sunset, they turn Clayton from the college, and they probably, I would say, someone mentioned about 60 miles an hour, and I would say that's pretty good average speed, and they don't stop. They just fly right down the hill and come up. It's definitely, the neighborhood is definitely not safe for kids when those streets are open. I mean, I'd say about 2 months ago, I was getting my son off the bus, and I had somebody that was behind the bus honking their horn at me and telling me I was too long getting my son off the bus because, you know, they needed to get through and get back up to Westfield, or like they had to cut through. I even asked politely, I said, are you in the neighborhood? And they go, no, we don't live in the neighborhood. I said, we'll go around next time. You know, I mean, we shouldn't have to say to people on this. And the speed limit, it doesn't matter if it's 25, doesn't matter if it's 15, it doesn't matter. These people, they don't care. They just fly right through. So that's, you know, a lot of things that I kind of feel for it. I mean, we see it at every end of it. I mean, people from Sterling come through. I mean, it's kind of funny the way they kind of weave through. I mean, they know the streets pretty well now to get out and go, but it's definitely a hazard. And we did notice a big difference with it blocked off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else of the public who wishes to speak in favor, against, or have a comment relative to this? You can come on up to the mic. Just give your name and address.
Judy Selesky, 23 Clayton Road. One of the biggest things I've noticed that Brian touched on and several others touched on is it's a neighborhood again. I'm outside all the time doing yard work, and I've met more neighbors in the past 3 weeks than I have met in the 4 years that I've been back in that house. They wave, they stop, they chat. Everybody has commented, because I've made a point to ask, because I've been very active with Linda on this for a couple of years, what they think about it, and they all loved it. People were going up to the street the first night it was closed to see what happened. I came home from work early to mow the lawn, and I was laughing at the cars that went up the street and turned around and went back down. People are walking in the neighborhood. They've commented that it's in transition. There's little kids. I had more kids trick-or-treating this year than I've had since I've been in that house, and I give out candy every year. It's a neighborhood again. I want the barriers up.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy Marcinick, 54 Sterling. I like that the traffic was better. People weren't screaming through the neighborhood. The problem I had was trying to take a left turn to go onto Homestead, come home from work, take left. There's two blind streets. I think it's Clayton and Pinchin. Trying to go left at between 5 and 6 o'clock at night is dangerous because they're blind curves. There's bushes in the way. You can't see cars coming. I found that very dangerous, even with the boxes. People weren't going to let you out. You couldn't see cars coming. So that was my only major concern about that.
So bushes on the Sterling side?
If you're coming out of the neighborhood to go left on, or
Yeah.
is it north on
So
Homestead?
on Homestead.
On Homestead, yeah. There's some obstructed views, and even in the daytime, I've had trouble with that. And so
Okay.
something in that, what's that? Yeah, that's really bad. And then when you guys put the sign to say no through traffic, it blocked the view out of Sterling coming from Homestead to see the cars coming this way. So it was just like, oh my
with
God.
that, with the temporary one that was there?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so that's my only concern. I do like not having the traffic
Yeah.
passing through the neighborhood, but I was very fearful going back out in the evening. That's my only comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
A little short. Hi, I'm Kimberly Hatch. I live at 23 Pinchin Road, and I am a huge fan of the barriers. I walk my dog every night. I'm the one that's with the pink light-up leash. People have probably seen me. I always make sure I'm following the rules and walk against traffic. I have perfected the slow-down arm over the months, which is not as effective as I want it to be.
Say,
The
how did that
barriers
work?
have been significantly more effective. I feel much safer walking at night, especially because it's dark as soon as I get out of work. So if it was a permanent change, I'd be a big fan. I've gotten to know so many more neighbors. I met Judy walking my dog when she was doing yard work. So big fan. Put him up.
Thank you. Is there, oh, yeah.
I'm Kathleen McCann. I live at 35 Sunset Road. I just want to show my support for those barriers. Like Brian had said, it was wonderful. The 3 weeks that those barriers were up, it was quiet on our street. Right now, they're down, and once again, I can time my watch by people starting to come through at 3:08 in the afternoon until 5:30 at night, and they are speeding down Sunset. They're going 40 and 50 miles an hour. Those 3 weeks was like heaven. And again, like Judy said and Brian, we're a neighborhood when those barriers were up. And I fully support barriers being put up, or whatever, you talked about sidewalks, but.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Hello, Karen Hirschberg, 81 Ashley Road. I also enjoyed the quiet neighborhood. However, I've had an unpleasant time coming and going from my house. Every time I leave, I come and go on Ashley Road. For the weeks I could not do that, I was having trouble with fast traffic as I tried to make a left turn on Homestead. It felt very unsafe. So I'm wondering if we could look at some of those alternatives to give us the quiet neighborhood. Everybody wants a quiet neighborhood, but I don't know if everybody really wants both of those roads closed off forever. I noticed the light timing wasn't changed. Is that right?
That's correct. That's a process that involves the city and the state.
Yeah, because I think especially for the traffic going to 202, that will make people stop cutting through if the timing of the light is changed. And we discussed several other alternatives that would really nice to, I'd love to see explored before I permanently lose my access and have to risk getting hit while pulling out left onto Homestead Avenue.
Were
It
there
really is unpleasant and sometimes scary for me.
Were there any other particular suggestions that you have in mind that you're referring to?
I've been told speed bumps have been extremely effective on other streets where the traffic has actually stopped cutting through because they hated the speed bumps so much. And you had some others, I don't remember them all. And there's one other thing I can't
No,
remember.
I was just asking in case there was a particular one, that's all.
Okay. I can't remember the other point I was going to make. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carrie Parsons, 20 Pearson Road. I'm totally in favor for the barriers. I have a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 14-year-old. My 14-year-old runs track, before practice started, she started running the neighborhood, getting yelled at by the cars cutting through going to Westfield, so she came home. She was scared to run around her neighborhood in the daylight. And my 1 and 2-year-old, I like to walk them in their stroller, and the cars go so fast, you get nervous. Since the barriers were up, we were able to walk, run, play basketball, go outside again. It was really nice, so we really liked them.
Thank you. Sure.
My other issue.
Sure.
Now I'm going through the neighborhood. I'm not going at high speed, but nonetheless, I'm encountering children in dark clothing after dark in the street playing as I'm coming home. And that's also a bit nerve-wracking. Instead of being able to just leave the neighborhood, I'm winding through or going down, Ashley to Clayton and so on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
Lauren Tabin from 15 Pearson Road. I bought my house back in 2003, my husband and I, and since then we've had one child in addition to one child while we lived there. The purpose, what we were drawn to, was the neighborhood that everyone's talking about. Then the neighborhood was a quiet neighborhood, and if I remember correctly, it seemed like everything changed once we added that light onto 202 and the access road at Holyoke Community College. Something to think about. I don't know if there's another traffic study that can happen to look into that more than what has already happened. But looking at our neighborhood and adding sidewalks, do we really want to narrow the streets? I don't think that would be a good alternative. Adding speed bumps, I think we talked a lot about the people that are coming through our neighborhood who don't belong, don't have any consideration for the families. They're flying up and down. Their cars are just going to be airborne like it was, or like they already are up on Vermont Street. Talk to those neighbors. A lot of those neighbors are completely against those speed bumps. In speaking about our neighborhood is unique, and I think that we definitely are in a transition. Many houses don't stay on the market and or even hit the market. You have young families that have bought into our neighborhood that are now really looking to go elsewhere, and it really comes down to the safety. The day that the barriers went up, I wasn't aware that the barriers were going up that day. I could not believe the traffic that I could hear from my closed inside my home, my closed house, how much traffic was going by the house, and it was a comedy show watching them turn around and leave, and then how quiet it got within one working day. They didn't come back. They got the message. Now we're right back to where we were. They're rude, and they have absolutely no consideration to the neighborhood that they're running through. They're not taxpayers. They're ruining our streets. My son is the son that's outside playing basketball all of the time, and there have been point in times where we don't allow our 14-year-old son to go outside to play basketball because it's just not safe, and that's just not fair.
Thank you. This is public comment, so if anyone hasn't spoken yet, come to the mic. If you wish to speak again, I think we're up to the last person who hasn't spoken yet.
Hi, myself Ganinder Dhaliwal, 550 Westfield Road. Before I say, I'm not in favor or unfavor for that block the road. My question is to the committee. You guys supposed to do any survey on those 2 or 3 weeks? You guys did any survey on that? Like Dave Barley told me, so the committee working to do survey, how that barrier working or not. So you guys did any survey on those?
That's what the purpose of this public hearing is to do the follow-up from the temporary.
Right,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then I made some videos when the burial was there. And first day, when burial was there, I stood there for half hour, and there was people through the burial, up the sidewalk, going to the Westfield, turning left, and I made a video I sent to the Mike McInnes. I went back after 5 more days, stood there for half hour, and made other video. People were still cutting through, even burial was there. My question is, I'm not here to block the barrier, to take the barrier off or put the barrier. My question is, if rush time, one of the neighborhood have a fire, or kids get injured, or senior citizen get injured, the ambulance need to go through. Fire need to go through, fire department. Do they need to get up from the fire truck, move the barrier before they go in? How that gonna work? It's concerned for safety, people who live there, or kids. Kids have emergency. 4:30 to 6:30. When I opened the Dinos on 2007, on that light used to be only 3 or maybe 10 car top rush time. Now they're 100 car. So in rush time, if the fire department need to go to that neighborhood, if the ambulance need to go to that neighborhood, how are they gonna get there if we block the road? This should be because it's a taxpayer road we make not to block. I think we should have more, any other concern how we can do that safety, like if we're coming on Hitchcock Street on Northampton Street, there's a sign, do not take a right between in the morning, 6 to 9:30, in the evening. If we have sign, law enforcement, city need money. Our taxes keep going up, right? Well, why don't we have law enforcement? We can do ton of ticket on that area, only that area, in the morning front of 5:50. When I need to get up, drop my kid, I had to wait sometime half hour to get up from my driveway. For evening time, when I pick up my kid, so I coming on Westfield Road, I need to turn left to my driveway. I can't turn left because traffic keep moving. Nobody gives a chance. So I used to come around. Go to Sunset, turn right on Sunset, go to my driveway. It was easy for me. So I get stopped on the neighborhood. Even I'm going 15 mile an hour, I get stopped a few times. Are you coming in this road? You live here? Yes, ma'am, I live here. Where do you live? I live in 550 Westfield Road. I explained myself and I came. But my concern is safety. So before everybody think about that, blocking back that road, think about anybody can have an emergency or the fire could happen, what they're gonna happen, how the fire department's gonna get there. Those are my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw somebody coming to the mic from the back there.
Okay, so
So,
I'm coming back for a second time.
okay, so, but we have a long agenda, so if you
It's
could
quick.
be
It's
brief,
quick.
and then I want Mike to be able to speak to some of the
Okay, I
points
just
that
had
have been made.
Three things to add. One, what Dino just brought up about going over the sidewalk. That's the people that went through the dead end sign. That's the inconsiderate the neighbors that we're talking about that are not neighbors, that are coming through and can't take the time to turn around and do an S-turn in the street and go back out the right way. That's all they do is think about themselves. Second of all, without the traffic going out, that light wasn't changing. And I think the traffic, as I was watching, the traffic on Homestead was less because they were able to continue straight on that light. I was in favor of lengthening, I'm sure people heard me talking about, you did, especially about taking the light and making it longer. The time that it is now, sometimes they're backed up 11 or 12 cars. That's 3 houses down. We can't get out of our driveway. So the barriers are, what I found, the barriers are an awesome solution to what it has. Yes, we have a few. We're not going to find the panacea, is what I said at the last time. But this is pretty darn close to a panacea for most of this neighborhood. And again, it is a neighborhood again, so.
Thank you.
Hi, Connor Bevan. I am also coming up for my second comment. I just wanted to make one comment regarding alternative options. So alternative options besides the barriers, they do not eliminate both problems, the traffic flow problem and the speed problem. An alternative option may eliminate one, but not both, right? So there is a duality of issues that we're hearing. It's traffic flow and speed, and safety. So if an inconvenience is 5 minutes in a relatively rural community, and that's an inconvenience that I understand. But if we're going to weigh it against safety, I urge the committee to take that into consideration. The alternative options, again, don't solve both. They may solve one or another. And as a resident, I'm not asking or going in favor or opposed to, but this decision will impact my permanent residency as a husband and as a father. So,
Thank you. I'm not seeing, oh, sure.
Paul Gabala, Pinchin Road. Just one additional thing. I noticed when the barriers were up, there were a lot of signs that were put up. Homestead Avenue, and I've seen this at Clark and Gilman. There are signs for a $300 fine if you block the intersection. I know it doesn't mean anything if it's not enforced, but there were no signs placed on Homestead at those intersections, at Sterling, Clayton, and Pinchin, and there isn't even one at the fire station. So not to say that people will pay attention to it, but if they see that sign, maybe it'll keep the intersections open more, because sometimes even trying to get out, rolling stops, they think they're going to make it through and they end up stopping right on the X. So just in addition to all the other signs, you put them back up. If you could put those signs back up also, or put them up to begin with.
Thank you. Not seeing, last call. I don't want to skip anybody if they've been patiently waiting. But I would like to give Mike McManus an opportunity, because perhaps there's been some points made that you could speak to around safety access and.
Yeah, so regarding the safety, we originally were going to put all concrete Jersey barriers across both Sunset and Ashley, but after talking about it with Chief Pond and Manny, we decided to put at least 2 of what are water-filled barriers on the edge, so that they could be moved by ambulance or fire apparatus or somebody. And
Oh, this was for the temporary one?
for the temporary ones, yeah. And that's why they were light barriers that someone could get out of their car
And move.
move to the side so that they can continue on if they so choose. The permanent solution, if a permanent solution would go in, I don't see putting barriers across the street the way that we did would be permanent. There are other ways with curbing and sidewalk, or removable bollards that could be placed. With curbing and sidewalk, there are other places in the city where, and it's at the high-speed computing center, where there is access to the back of the building on a sidewalk. And there would be a ramp on the Westfield Road side of the sidewalk, so that the fire apparatus or the ambulance could drive through. And you know, we'd also have to figure out what we would do with snow removal and other things. So we wouldn't just throw safety out. It would be in the forefront of our consideration of what we do. For the traffic signal at Homestead and Westfield, we are in the process of having that studied by a consultant to see if there's an optimization of that signal, but also of the intersection, in order to improve flow through that intersection in the morning and afternoon peak periods. And the hope is that with optimization there, it would help people get out of the neighborhood onto Homestead. Speed humps and speed bumps, I mean, there is a difference between the two. Speed humps are what we've installed on Vermont Street or other places. It's where a vehicle has to slow down but can continue traveling. The goal is to get the vehicle to slow down to 25 miles per hour at the speed hump, whereas a speed bump, you have to slow down to 5 miles per hour to comfortably go over a speed bump. So speed bumps are used in parking lots, places like that, whereas speed humps are put out on roads that are used. So I'm not sure if we've looked at speed humps in the neighborhood in the past. I don't think there's anything before us right now to consider speed humps.
I can only say I've distributed many petition forms for them, but at repeated meetings over the last couple of years, it hasn't been seen as effective by the neighbors.
With speed humps, generally the people would decrease their speed as they approach the speed hump, and I don't think it would be a deterrent to someone to not cut through the neighborhood if they had to go over a handful of speed humps to avoid the light at Homestead and Westfield. I think they would still cut through. But what it would do is reduce the speed of those people as they're traveling through the neighborhood. And then when you get into speed, that goes into enforcement, where you need the enforcement of speed limits and any other types of restrictions that we would put up, whether it's a no right turn between these hours or no left turn between these hours. You would need the enforcement to be there in order to make those types of signs effective. There's some comments about sidewalks, and I don't think we have any plan on installing sidewalks in the neighborhood in the near future. I'm not sure if there's street lights out there. I'm just
Yes.
Street lights. Okay. As far as the don't block the box signs, those don't block the boxes are in ordinance now, so we should be able to put up a sign, and I think that's just an oversight on our end on the $300 fine signs that we didn't install them.
Okay.
We were in a rush to get the road painted when we had good weather.
And you heard compliments on how quickly that happened.
And then as far as schedule goes, if there's any permanent solution that's installed to close off Ashley or Sunset, it would be next spring when we would do it.
So from the perspective of the public hearing and needing to gather information, do you need more time to be able to get the information back from the state relative to making a decision on this? Or do you feel that you have the information that you need and the feedback from the neighborhood to be able to give us a recommendation?
So we wouldn't need any approval from the state since we own these roads. We can make any modifications that we want. As far as permanently discontinuing those two roads as dead-end streets, the Board of Public Works could make a recommendation to the full city council, but it's up to the full city council to make that final vote to make those streets dead ends.
And I'm only asking because the purpose of the public hearing is to gather the information needed and make sure there's enough opportunity to gather it before we get recommendations and then make a recommendation to the city council. It seems like we have a good representation of neighbors from the neighborhood who have also spoken with other neighbors. I did receive an email from a person outside of the neighborhood. I think maybe other committee members did also, wanting to keep the roads open. It was a person in a neighborhood across the way that indicated that she would like to see the streets remain open. It's the only other email that I'm aware of, unless others are aware of anything else.
Any communication that we received, I had forwarded to you.
Yes, I believe this was a Joan Grady from.
Was it Kane Road?
Which street?
Kane?
It was off of Kane, but hang on.
Green Willow.
Green Willow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm entering that into the record relative to the public hearing because she did correspond in that regard. All right.
I have a question.
Counselor Lisi.
Thank you. So are we still pursuing with the state a study to extend the timing of the light?
Which light are you talking
The
about?
one on Homestead and Westfield, the one that...
Sunset, right?
Sunset and Westfield? The one that the neighbors were talking about would benefit from a prolonged time?
Sunset.
Sunset and Westfield.
No, we're not working with the state currently on
So we haven't asked
changing
them
the timing.
to examine that?
We have not.
And so, does it seem at this point in time the most likely course of action is then to block and create the barriers for the neighborhood as opposed to looking at how the timing of the light would affect the neighborhood?
I mean, given that we wouldn't do any construction work until spring, we do have time that we could look into what making a cycle change would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having as much data and information as possible before moving forward on anything that's going to be a permanent change makes sense. So if we have some time, I think it makes sense to ask the state to look at those changes and see how they affect the neighborhood. I think also in terms of the barriers, I heard you talk about the sidewalk bollards.
It would be one or the other.
So, because I've seen like the bollards that depress into the ground that allow emergency vehicles to pass through, but in the meantime, like they're up and only the emergency vehicles have the key that would allow them to depress. Is that what you're thinking, or something much more rudimentary?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So removable bollards, they, you have to pick them up and move them out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing that would automatically retract for an emergency vehicle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I would note that a number of months ago, I had filed an order to look at extending the length of time for the light to change at sunset. And at that time, I think the feedback was that it was a long process through the state, because right now it's on demand, so people are kind of rewarded for cutting through. But while it's possible that you could do that, my experience on Homestead and in that neighborhood is the longer the people are waiting at that light, you're just moving the cars queuing on Homestead to queuing through a neighborhood down further into the neighborhood. That's what the longer length of time would accomplish from what I can see, because we've been looking at this for a couple of years, you know. So I think any other information that you could get relative to the light doesn't require the public hearing to be held open, I don't think. But if I could have a motion, I'd just like to defer to legal on that.
Motion to suspend the necessary rules and allow legal to speak.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So, Crystal, relative to the purpose of the public hearing, do we need to keep it open for Mike to have discussions about a technical change on a light, which really is not the main purpose of the public hearing?
So you can ask Mike questions at any time. Your department heads or staff of the city can speak without having the public hearing.
You did clarify that for us. Thank you for clarifying it again. I appreciate it. So I think actually, because we've had such good representation from the neighborhood, and we did have opportunity to get feedback from other folks, if the committee is of a mind, I think we would be in order to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have closed the public hearing, and what this allows is for the consideration of the feedback from the neighborhood, which I heard as being overwhelmingly positive, to DPW and Mike McManus. It doesn't mean he can't consider the other options, and it doesn't mean that he's final in what his recommendation would be to accomplish the permanent closure, but it will allow us to take in all your feedback and the emails that we received and the information that Mike has given us over the next few months, and understanding that nothing would happen before the spring in terms of the timeline for whatever action. So there will be continued work that will go on even though this public hearing is closed. And when I have more information, I'll put out a notice for a citizens meeting out in Ward 5 where we can get together and kind of see where everything is at. Okay? Thank you all for coming down. Thank you for your interest in your neighborhood and our city.
Hey, Mike, are you leaving as well?
Now, Mike is down here for other things too. Thank you, Joe.
Joe, where are you going?
Rebecca has joined us, so Joe's duties to form a quorum have completed since we completed this agenda item. Yes, absolutely. While the room clears, it's a good time.
Oh, awesome. All right. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Especially when the people that live at the end.
Is that not the MSCC? It'll still be a while for you though.
No, they forgot to bring it up.
I think the fairest thing is to go back to regular order, you know, because everybody's waiting, you know? Everybody's. Juan's walking to his back. I'm just giving.
I do think that we should do.
Oh, yeah. We're going to save this to last because nobody has to be here for it. Yes, yes. Well,
Well, the DPW will want to be here.
well, let me make sure. I think he's got Bob lined up for that. Everybody has to stay for one reason or another, so we might as well just go in order. Unless there's, because nobody's gonna, well, I guess we could do the bank first. Now,
Are we ready to do anything?
well, no, that's all right. No problem. Okay, so thank you for your patience, everyone. We're going to go back to regular order, so I'll entertain a motion on number 2.
Motion to take up item number 2.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Item 2 is a special permit application from Solurge Inc. to operate an MME, MMD, RMRE, and RMCE and delivery service at 650 Beaulieu Street, map 055, block 00, parcel 001. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are in the public hearing for this special permit application from Solurge. So if the representatives would like to come to the mic, And name and address.
You can do it. David Kotler, I'm the Chief Compliance Officer of Solurge, located at 650 Beaulieu Street. I have with me a number of folks I'm going to introduce. However, may we have permission for Mr. Gagnon to come in front of the bar with his easel?
Sure.
For presentation?
Sure.
And is this the adequate, or the proper time to do that, to have our full presentation during the public
Absolutely.
portion? May I also step before the bar, or would you prefer me on the mic?
Everybody that's part of the presentation can come in.
Will your recording pick me up?
You'll need to use one of the microphones.
You can take any of these and just press the button so the green light is on. You'll have to hold it.
Bring it in front.
Oh, yeah, that can come out also. Whatever's easier. But you will have the cord still.
I get to play Vanna White this evening, and I guess I'm excited and disappointed. I thought all those people were for us. I'll go with excited. By way of introduction, Solurge Inc. was formed in 2017. We are currently holders of a provisional certificate of registration for dispensing, cultivation, and processing at 650 Beaulieu Street, issued by the Department of Public Health here in the state of Massachusetts. We are committed in writing to hiring at least 30% local population through a host agreement with the mayor and the city. With me in attendance are Michael Gagnon. He's a civil engineer with Malone and McBroom from Springfield. Andy Aarons, our CEO, is present, as well as other staff members from Solurge, in addition to our security director, who I'm proud to say is a local lifetime resident of Holyoke, Joey Jones, former police department officer. And we also have with us Jason Boutet from Valley Communications, who's serving as our security consultant in terms of equipment and other security devices, which we are probably better suited than Fort Knox to handle most anything. Pursuant to Holyoke's Medical Marijuana Facilities Ordinance, Solurge made initial application on August 10th, 2018, with additional materials submitted on October 2nd, 2018, to satisfy some of the back and forth we'd had with the planning department, in particular Jeff Burkott, if I'm saying that properly. As you stated, Solurge is applying for a marijuana manufacturing establishment, MME license, medical marijuana dispensary, MMD, and recreational marijuana retail establishment, MMRE, as well as delivery. Your ordinance doesn't specifically delineate delivery as a separate license. However, it's encompassed within your definition of the MMD classification. And delivery by medical license holders, which we are, a provisional medical license holder, is contemplated by 105 CMR 725.110, which is the rules that govern from DPH prior to taking over by CCC, medical license holders such as ourselves. And so we do contemplate medical delivery because we are enabled by that state statute, and that is controlling of what we do and how we do it. In our supplemental materials, we presented a delivery plan, and I can certainly answer any questions. It's a pretty standard plan that we've used in other states that I personally have helped create, and we can discuss what that encompasses. If you need an extra copy, we can certainly supply that. What is not permitted by state statute is delivery for adult use purposes. And what we would ask is for the committee not to prevent us from doing that in the future and unnecessarily taking your time and the resources to reconsider that, but simply just to leave that aspect open so that we would like, obviously, as part of what we're asking for under the special use permit, delivery for medical purposes as contemplated by state statute and your ordinance. And additionally, not prevent us from in the future by any specific additional language from doing delivery for adult use purposes. We wouldn't be able to until we're provided that ability by the CCC anyway, probably not until next spring. But more importantly, if you prevent or if we put that prohibition in, what you're going to find is all of the dispensaries from other areas will be delivering into the city. And so you'll be losing the revenue through your host agreement that you could have. And so for that reason, I'd ask that you don't provide the prohibition with any special comments, just leave it open and upon state licensure, if we choose to pursue that for adult use purposes, and if we are granted that by the state. Within our initial submission and the additional materials, we submitted everything that was required by 7.10.6 subsection 1 of the ordinance. Because we took a little longer and kind of wanted to be proactive, we were able to obtain the police chief's sign-off. I have a copy of that letter if you don't have it. And so the chief had reviewed probably our 55-page security plan, inclusive of location of interior, exterior cameras, door strikes, all security entryways, including man traps, sally ports, et cetera, that we find quite often in these facilities, and that we can talk about a little. Unfortunately, you can't share all of it with it because it's public record, and we certainly don't want somebody having that at their disposal, but certainly can talk about that. But we have the chief's letter as required by your ordinance. We also had participated and received, after public hearing with the Stormwater Authority, their letter approving our stormwater permit. We actually had representatives of the community come and listen to that as well. And we've been working with the planning department through Jeff Burkott, in particular discussions that Mr. Gagnon has had with him to address all issues, and received email. I don't want to say signing off, I'll let the department speak for themselves, but it looked like we worked through any issues the department had with our proposed plans, and that subject to any special conditions the committee may put on it, that we had satisfied that which we needed to satisfy from a planning perspective. In regard to 7.10.6 subsection 2, I'm going to let a gentleman smarter than myself, Mr. Gagnon, walk you through a little bit of the plan, how to look and change the surroundings. I got to tell you, we're going to leave the property better looking than how we found it. And I think from a beautification standpoint, a security standpoint, and what a neighborhood might want to see, we've satisfied those concerns that are expressed within your ordinance. I will mention, because sometimes it's on the tip of people's tongue, especially in Massachusetts, when we look at the two most recent openings of dispensaries, and we look at long lines and concerns about traffic, that really is the 50-year storm. Those are once-in-a-lifetime events that I don't think as the program rolls out here in Massachusetts that we're going to face here in Holyoke, and certainly not based on the timing of our anticipated opening going to face in terms of traffic problems and long lines, because by the time that we open our doors, candidly, you'll probably already have 3 dispensaries open here, if not 5 or 6 in surrounding communities. So it's not something that I foresee, based on my experience in other jurisdictions where they've rolled out adult use programs, and from what I see in the timing of Massachusetts rollout, that we can expect at 650 Beaulieu, thousands of cars showing up in lines around the street. So happy to answer any questions that the committee has. I'll let Mr. Gagnon kind of walk you through the plans a little bit in compliance with the site plan, subsection 2 of the ordinance. And thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Good evening. As David indicated, Mike Gagnon. I am a senior civil engineer with Malone and McBroom. Our offices are located right in Main Street in Springfield. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. And I think what I would like to do is just give you a brief presentation of the plan set that's up here on the board, just to kind of walk you through some of the details of the project. Hopefully I won't get too technical, and obviously at some point I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. As Dave had pointed out, we've been working tirelessly with the other city departments to make things right for this project, particularly with the planning department staff. We've been through a couple of iterations with the drawings to appease their concerns. We've submitted all the necessary documentation, including a traffic impact evaluation. We heard as of late that that might come as a concern for this project, and as we had demonstrated in that evaluation, that this facility should not have any impact to the surrounding neighborhood at all. So with that, what I will do is just to walk you through the plans. This plan set was what was submitted as permit drawings to the planning department as well as DPW and the Stormwater Authority to seek those approvals. What this plan here is, this is our existing conditions and removals plan. Just to give you a little orientation, Beaulieu Street is across the bottom of the page here. Garfield Street is up along the left here. And pretty much the existing one-story building is going to remain in place. There is not going to really be any change to the overall building footprint. However, we are going to be making some rather dramatic, what we call improvements to the site. As you are aware, City of Holyoke is got some pretty stringent stormwater requirements, and any time that, as we are doing here, we're doing a substantial reconstruction of any of the parking areas, we have to comply with the stormwater ordinance, and I'll get into some of those details in a moment. So this gray shaded area, this actually shows the existing parking lot area that's going to be removed along the southerly side of the building. That area is, if you've driven through here, is in pretty tough shape. The pavement is delaminated, broken in several places. The other issue here is this is a wide open curb cut, very little access control to the site right now. The other is that there's a utility pole with a fenced-in area with overhead transmission wires that go out to Garfield Street, rather unsightly. Recognizing this is an industrial area, that's actually going to be removed as part of this project. The northerly side of the building is going to be pretty much remain as is with respect to the fenced-in area up here as well as the parking areas. Now to start to get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the plans, this is our what we call our layout plan. So now we're starting to show what the improvements are going to start to look like, particularly in the parking area here. And by the way, we've got a parking summary that's down here on the lower right-hand corner of the page, and that demonstrates that we attained the necessary parking requirements for the facility in accordance with the zoning ordinance, as well as providing the necessary accessible parking spaces, which are actually shown right down here at the corner of the building. As I had mentioned earlier, the improvements with this plan is we're making controlled access to this parking area. Ingress or entrance is going to be down in here, and the exit will be out here, as opposed to the wide open curb cut that's out there now. Some other improvements, we're making some pedestrian improvements, particularly along Garfield Street. There is what we believe there was a sidewalk there at one time. We're essentially putting that back in place so that folks will have the opportunity to walk out to the corner. And in addition to that, at the street crossings, we'll be providing ramps as well. Getting into some of the grading. This is our grading and utilities plan. I won't go into a lot of detail here. There's a lot of engineering on this plan. This shows some of the new utility service connections that are going to be provided. We do have one sanitary lateral that's going to be connected out onto Beaulieu Street. But essentially, all other of the existing utility services for the building will remain in place. That includes electric, water service. All of those facilities are working okay and are able to accommodate the proposed use. This plan also shows our stormwater management system that I alluded to earlier. And one of the things that we need to look at with stormwater management is two things, and that's peak flow reduction as well as stormwater quality enhancements as required by your ordinance. So with respect to peak flow attenuation, we're able to actually reduce the amount of impervious area out in this area by almost 13%. That's going to reduce peak runoff, as well as we're also providing subsurface stormwater infiltration for the roof water from the building. And that really is a twofold purpose that will actually reduce that peak flow, but it also provides a mechanism for groundwater recharge, which is so important, particularly in an area like this where you've just got expanse of impervious area throughout. Okay, this is our sedimentation and erosion control plan. Again, I won't go into a lot of detail here, but there's a lot of notes and technical information. Again, during construction, we're going to have to adhere to some pretty strict sediment and erosion controls, recognizing the parking area that's going to be constructed in the grand scheme of things is only about 0.2 of an acre, but nevertheless, we don't want to impact the abutting streets. This sheet shows more or less the beautification of the project. This is our landscaping and planting plan. So this is the southerly parking area here, and we've got a whole series of plantings that are going to be provided in the green space adjacent to the sidewalk here. And what we've done here is we've actually incorporated what we call mini rain gardens in this area. And what this is going to do is provide that water quality enhancement that I was speaking to earlier, where the vegetation in these areas are going to uptake some of the pollutants from the runoff from the parking areas. So that's where we get the stormwater quality enhancement. We've got some other plantings that are being provided out here at the entry area to the building. So overall, we think that this is going to be a significant improvement with respects to the aesthetics of the facility. And then these are just, I'll just make mention here, these are our construction details associated with the various site components on the project. And then the last sheet that I'd like to point out, and again, this was reviewed by your planning staff, is these are actually the sign details that will be used on the project. We got a couple of building mounted samples here, as well as there's a little kiosk sign that's going to be placed out at the front entry area. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. I just want to note that I had communication from Marcos Marrero, and Jeff Burkott at Quadra 5 sent us over the summary from the planning staff that they've been working with you, and I see that Mr. Marrero is here with us. So I didn't know if you wanted to run down this. It seems like this would be a good time.
Alan's just giving me a face.
I don't have my glasses on.
He couldn't see you.
Thank you for the opportunity. This will be rather easy. We actually had our comments, embarrassingly enough, done October 11th, but we weren't aware that this was going to be heard. We were confused and thought Boston Bud was going to be heard.
Well, actually, they were both supposed to be heard, so.
Oh, this one works better.
It was a twofer.
So in summary, we actually have no outstanding issues with them. Solurge met with us pretty early, even before a pre-application meeting, and their design team provided everything that we would hope for, a photometric plan, responded to, there's usually a conversation going, not just like findings and that's it, responding to our concerns with site circulation, pedestrian circulation, showing dimensions on the plan, showing landscaping, explaining it a little bit better, making sure that they were accounting for parking on the site, not taking credit for parking that was on the right of way, because of course they can't reserve that for themselves. So we really have it's rare. We have really no issues whatsoever with this.
It was a
Mark
funny.
this down somewhere.
It seemed like a funny write-up because there were no unanswered questions, nothing outstanding. So
correct.
I'm seeing response accepted throughout.
Mhm.
So.
Did you, Mr. Gagnon, if I may?
Councilor Lisi, sure.
Could you just show the inside of the building again, and perhaps talk a bit about the way that the space might be divided amongst the different uses that you're anticipating? It does.
You just press the button so the green light is on?
Yeah, I'll defer to others to talk about that, but I do have the architectural plans in here.
You would probably want to do your Vanna White gig again.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I just read about it. So I call this the front of the building. This is going to be what we refer to as the dispensary area. Entry here with a ramp. It has an entry that is controlled, obviously, through security means, with a receptionist that again controls entry into the dispensary itself. This area constitutes a waiting room with a receptionist behind a window, essentially, with a security area as well. Main waiting here, toilet area here, but only for employees. Patients or customers eventually would be buzzed into the dispensary area, which maintains here. There is one way through the dispensary back to where there will be offices, executive offices, as well as our vault. One can, and the retail employees really will not have much access through. They have access to this hallway for fire ingress and egress purposes, but essentially no access to what you see making up the bulk of the middle of the building, which are essentially 4 what we call bloom rooms. I'm happy to share. Our cultivator, our director of cultivations, who's here, if you've never heard about what happens in the bloom room versus what we refer to as a veg room and then a mother room, but he could talk for 2 hours. I'm not sure you want to wait that long, but happy to make him available if you ever want to walk the facility or hear about those things. Those rooms will obviously maintain LED lighting, rolling benches, and that's where the bulk of the cultivation happens. I didn't point out, but there is a kitchen in between this bloom room you see here and the dispensary. We'll be employing a chef for edibles who's a former restaurateur with successful restaurants in Boston. Moving through this main hallway, which is a pretty wide hallway and will allow ingress and egress to these rooms without any issue. You see cultivation and prep irrigation rooms, a separate mother room, a separate drying room, a separate room for trim and packaging. Again, another separate vault area where product is securely and safely stored. A processing area, which probably will end up being about 700 feet. We intend on employing not just an extraction specialist, but most likely a PhD chemist for our products. Coming through here, down to the corner of the building, you see kind of more of the nitty-gritty, which is a break room, lockers for the cultivation employees. We use a clean system where they have to go through decontamination essentially, and almost good manufacturing standards. I will point out, as a point of interest, one thing that we did go back and forth on the chief was, ideally, usually we like a way of entry into the building from a security standpoint that allows some fencing on the outside before opening the building. And so through a little bit of brain power from Valley Communications, this area is what you call man trap. And so if we're delivering or having deliveries, our vehicle will pull in to this bay here. The door, the interior door or interior entry will not open until this door is closed. And they call that a man trap. And so it prevents somebody from ducking in behind a vehicle and then gaining entry to the facility unauthorized. And if they were, which is highly unlikely, obviously we have another security unit located here. For the most part, that's the building. All of these areas are monitored. We've discussed with the police chief having direct monitoring to the police, so they can log into the cameras should they choose. Is something we discussed, yes?
Yes. My question is, how secure are these cameras? Like, how good are they?
They're the best. They're pretty expensive. Not that makes them the best, but we've probably, look, you can get Kias, you can get Caddies, and you can get Ferraris, and we're probably closer to the Ferrari than the Kia.
So are they around the perimeter all around?
Yes. We have 3, so probably, because it's public record, I don't want to show the outside, but what I can tell you is that we have 360-degree view of the building, in the exterior as well as the interior.
The reason why I ask is because there's a business that's it's on Main Street, and their concern was that security. So I just want to make sure that that's actually covered.
Yeah, we'll probably end up having to watch their building as well. I mean, I say that as a joke because our coverage is such that, I mean, these days you can't run an operation like this on a dime, and so security is paramount concern. I'm a former prosecutor, that's where I started, so I think about those things.
Right.
And so and you really deter crime 2 ways. Yes. One is lighting, which we know we've covered, and the other is cameras that do a couple of things. One, you want facial recognition, which our cameras have the pixel levels, and we had the choice, but we have a pixel level that can recognize faces as well as license plates.
Perfect.
And we're capable of monitoring essentially 360 degrees around the building.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask another question.
Council Lisi?
So retail and medical will be dispensed in the same area?
Yes, we have to have a separate register essentially for it by state statute. That'll be dealt with at where you see this counter here, with a separate area for a patient to purchase and then separate areas for eventually adult use customers to purchase.
And the customers don't go beyond that area. The office spaces are literally office spaces. They're not doing like consultations in those spaces.
No, we had anticipated, and it may or may not show, an area for consultation within the dispensary. So frankly, no one that's not a badged person is able to come through this door and enter these areas.
Okay. And then just really quickly, do you have a sense of how many retail employees you'd be hiring compared to production cultivation?
The retail, it's funny, I did an application a while ago where we estimated 8 for a small dispensary and it was found to be low. So on the retail side, I'm estimating probably 12 to 15, depending on how we run our shifts. That may be inclusive of C-suite level folks. We're hands-on. So candidly, we'll be in the dispensary working, probably sweeping all the way through supervising. And then our total estimate for the whole facility is probably around 25. So the balance of that working through the cultivation areas. I will mention that as of now, our secure entry for cultivation side is coming over here. Again, secured entry, you can't see it, but it says cultivation employee entrance, minimizing the distance that any employee has to walk from the parking lot to gain entry to the building, again, for safety.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Vacon.
Thank you. Can you just run through us what your provisional certification includes, I think you said dispensing, cultivating, and processing?
Yes, if
Is
I
it-
was, go ahead.
Is it, so I know you're all set on the medical side, and how far is the approval on the recreational?
We have not made adult use application as of yet.
Okay, so this
We were
is-
really medically focused to
This is
begin
all
with.
medical at this time, that is before us?
Well, no, similar to some of your other applicants, so that we're not doing this process twice, our goal would be to obtain all that which is permitted by your ordinance.
So you want to be permitted for the recreational, even though you haven't sought state approval for
That's
it?
accurate. We intend imminently to seek state approval. Obviously, the state would not allow us to operate without it.
Correct.
But to streamline the process, similar to other applicants you've had, we would seek it for our medical as well as our eventual adult use.
Okay, and I should note, just out of fairness, that for all of the other applicants prior to you, we have put in as a condition of the special permit that there shall be no marijuana consumption on site and that there shall be no deliveries of medical or recreational marijuana
Right, and that's-
to persons.
And that's why I wanted to be transparent and bring that up and be proactive at the beginning of this. I sat through a couple of those and my ears perked up. And sometimes you don't get what you don't ask for. And so I wanted to highlight what at least we believed through your ordinance and through state statute we had the ability to ask for. You can't get what you don't ask for. In review of your ordinance, I do see that I think it is contemplated that medical delivery is permitted by your ordinance, and certainly from a state perspective and taking patients into account, there are certain patients that just can't get out of bed. They may not have a caregiver that's capable of delivering something to them, and they should be entitled to have a local dispensary RMD provide them medicine. And so that's why we're asking for medical delivery, because it's permitted by state statute, in turn I think contemplated by the ordinance. So we wanted to be proactive in asking for it. I realized that you hadn't granted that in the past, but I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think they appropriately delineated or considered it.
I take your point on that, but the discussion in the crafting of the ordinance was related to the manufacturers delivering to sites out of the locality.
I understand.
Not contemplated for individuals.
I think Marco has his hand and wants to speak to this matter.
Ferrero?
If I may, I think the issue with the other applicants is no one else in their application made it clear that they wanted to make deliveries. So it wasn't an actual request from anyone else, not that we saw in the applications. So just like any part of the operation, anything you ask for is subject to inquiry and oversight by the permit granting authority. So I know that it's been a condition for every business. No one was really looking for it, so it wasn't like anyone was trying to do it. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the precedent itself wasn't limiting anyone before. This would be the first application that's actually seeking to do it, and so it would be completely in the permit granting authority's purview to ask every question based on that operation. How is that going to be safe? How is that going to work?
I hear what you're saying, and I know it wasn't specifically stipulated in prior applications, but it was discussed in the hearings. So, just as a matter of record. Is there anyone else who has any questions? I'm not seeing the letter from the police chief in here. It may be in here, and I just haven't gotten to it yet.
How about if I provide a copy?
That would be great. So if you can take the microphone.
Not Vanna. Let me just, may I approach?
Oh, sure. Thank you very much.
I'm Rob Bernard. I'm the safety and facility manager at US Sabaki, which is right next door at 821 Main Street. We share Garfield Street together. I think it's great that they're coming in and upgrading the facility next door. It's one of the older buildings that are in our industrial park. It's been run down for a number of years. They've already done a lot of cleanup. There was a lot of vegetation, overgrowth, and such. It's great. And I know you mentioned it's the 50-year storm, but my concern from a facility and safety standpoint is if that 50-year storm does hit and when they do open, I'm just concerned about the traffic, because we get tractor trailers that go down Garfield Street. We get probably between 20 and 25 deliveries made daily between UPS, FedEx, and long-haul trailers. I'm just concerned about pedestrian traffic, and also, the foot traffic going in and out of their facility, back into the parking lot, parking overflow, all those concerns just with coming down Garfield Street. So it's just something that it sounds like it's been addressed and done through a study, but I'm just concerned about the 50-year storm that he mentioned that, may not hit, and that's fine, but that the thought of what's happened in Northampton and also Leicester, Mass, and the great upswing in the dispensaries that have already opened. So that's all. But other than that, it's great that the next door the facility is being upgraded to the max. So that's great.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you could speak to that at all in any of the reviews that have happened? Or
I would punt
be
to
a
the city engineer.
stormwater review issue, right? More
Yes.
stormwater, so.
Mr. Parent,
I don't know if you folks want to weigh in on that? On the 50-year storm?
I'm sorry, my 50-year storm was more context with the movie.
No, but I'm referring to the comments by the, relative to the backup and the.
I may save us 2 minutes. My analogy to the 50-year storm was the likelihood of us having the traffic and the customers that you've seen on the news with Northampton and
because that was
Cultivate
the first
is
two.
a once in a lifetime. Once in a east of the Mississippi, they open 2 rec stores and that's it. It's not us.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding his concern. Was it around water management or traffic? Just the traffic? Okay, never mind. I thought your concern was around another part of the plan.
Something new?
I'm good. No, when he was saying he was concerned about it, I just thought he was.
Just be glad you didn't say the perfect storm.
There you go. There you go.
The concern is if there was any, thank you. The concern is just overflow parking. If they did get more than what they planned, it becomes very popular. It turns into on-street parking, and then how difficult is it for trucks making deliveries? That's my concern. And then people having to walk back to the cars. People having to walk back to the cars when there's tractor trailers coming up and down Garfield Street.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Just one commentary. I think Holyoke's going to be in a good position to be able to learn from past experiences. They're not going to be the first, the second,
Right.
or maybe even not the third or fourth. And I know living in East Hampton is already starting to plan for what happens when INSA opens up their recreational facility, and they're thinking they may be third or fourth in line. So they've already put together a task force within the city with the police department and other departments to get ready for what is going to happen. And I think Holyoke will be able to benefit from that, not being the third or fourth, probably the 20th, 30th, 50th, something in that. So there'll be a lot to be learned and a lot that the city will be able to do to get ready for the eventual opening of facilities like this.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so
I would also add that if that becomes a recurring condition and not just an issue of the first week and the rush, then clearly the estimates representing the special permit are off, and the city would be in its complete right to go back to the applicant and say you have to correct this and have mitigating measures. So if we were so lucky to have a business that creates that much traffic, then it could be put back on the business somehow as well.
Right, but earlier you indicated that in accordance with the normal measures, everything is fine and they're not even borrowing from the city
Yes, they're-
streets, et cetera.
Right, and specifically to traffic, we asked the question, how did you get to these traffic? Did you use the ITE numbers? And they have used the numbers that have been developed by the industry already. So their projections are based on solid science. We've already observed this in other states, so it's been well documented what type of traffic these places create, notwithstanding what happened last week in Northampton.
That was what, the first in the
It was the
area,
first in the
right?
Eastern Seaboard, yeah.
So the first of anything. Counselor McGiverin.
Just a quick question. Marcus, Garfield is a city street, correct?
Most of it, a piece of it was discontinued in the year 2000 from Main Street to Beaulieu Street.
A piece of it?
Yes.
You know, that was to accommodate the solar field and to accommodate at the time and Subaki itself. But Garfield itself, where it's a public street, the rules of the public road would prevail, including any parking regulations, and pedestrians don't walk in the road, they walk either on the sidewalk or through their cars.
Correct. It's a right of way. The rules apply there. Yep.
And corrective action, enforcement could be taken by the police department.
Whatever powers they have to do that, yes.
Thanks.
How's that? So I just want to read into the record, because we're in the public hearing, and what we've done with all the other applicants is read into the record the conditions that have gone along with each of the special permits. And so from the last one, the first item is that the owner of the building always pay commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of the special permit. 2, that the business retain a minimum of 30% Holyoke residents for non-security jobs, which I think you already referred to. 3, that hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holyoke police or are a retired member of another police department that now lives in the city of Holyoke, which I believe you also referred to. Number 4 and number 5. Number 4 is that there be no marijuana consumption to be allowed on site. Number 5 is that there shall be no deliveries of retail or medical marijuana from the site to individual homes, residences, or people. And I understand that you are specifically seeking not to have that included, but that I'm just reading into the public record what has been included on each one. 6, that hours of operation be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday. 7, that the business shall be in compliance with any specific communications, which I'm not seeing any from planning that are outstanding. But if there were any particular outstanding updates, we just stipulate that those be complied with. I'm not seeing any in this case, so if there aren't any, there wouldn't be any included. And so that would really cover being consistent from application to application. But we have heard what you're seeking, and the committee is aware of it for purposes of your application.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Before we do that, is there anybody else who wishes to be heard for any reason on this matter, in favor or against? Not seeing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is closed. We have at least one more public hearing to proceed to, and
We should probably, given that there's no other pending questions, we probably could take action. Are you ready to take final action on the application?
well, I would like to see more of the committee here to make a recommendation to the council, especially around the delivery aspect. I would rather leave the public hearing closed and put it on the agenda for our next meeting, so the other members of the committee can review the information and have opportunity for discussion.
I think the members of the committee would have an opportunity to have discussion at full council. I know it's not ideal to have that discussion.
I don't really like doing committee meetings over again at the city council. I mean, we spend a lot of time down here already. My preference would be one member's here almost at every single meeting, could not be at this meeting, and I don't see that there's a rush. There's a provisional approval here, so I don't think we're going to hold anybody up by closing the public hearing and taking it up in 2 weeks. you know. I'm not hearing urgency on the matter. I mean, the
I just-
application is complete, we have closed the public hearing, but I'd like, we just received the information from the planning, I haven't even read it. I mean, not that I am questioning their thing, but I like to read the information before I vote on a recommendation. So, for myself, I would prefer to read it.
I'm not sure by right of order if I can address the council or not.
You are welcome to address us.
The issue in terms of timing is, I mentioned that our adult use application is imminent. Certainly for us, which may not matter as much to you, there is some imminency in terms of granted the special use permit. It is going to push along our adult use applications.
Oh, if you receive the special permit as it pertains to the medical.
In conjunction with the build out of our building. We started this process in August, which has, again, nothing to do with the council, but we've tried to be diligent in inception. And so at that, I throw myself on the sword and suggest that be the reason not to delay anything. But certainly, by council's decision.
Well, it is committee that runs by majority vote. I have never voted on anything I haven't read the documentation for. And, you know, call me a stickler or call me what you will. I'm not questioning the work of others, but I like to know what I'm voting on, and I just like to read through all the data, and we just got it. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear the point you're making, and I just want to state that I feel ready to move on this only because the feedback that we've gotten from planning is satisfactory on all the accounts that they had asked for more information on. Like usually when we get this communication from planning, it says we still need to follow up about X, Y, and Z things. But here it's really, as Marco stated, it's really been complete and thorough, and all the outstanding questions have been answered. So,
and I agree with you on that point, but they are seeking to ask us to step away from the conditions that we have put on every other special application. And I just feel it would be better process for the full committee to weigh in on that relative to deliveries.
sure. I'm going to just state for the record, because I know I'm going to be traveling for the next city council meeting, but I'll just state for the record that I have not been in favor of any of the conditions that we've been putting on any of the previous applications, and I wouldn't be in favor of any of the conditions again. So, just for the record. Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Motion to take up item number 5, which is a special permit application of Westfield Bank.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 is a special permit application of Westfield Bank for an installation of an automatic teller machine, non-conforming structure at 1650 Northampton Street, Holyoke, Mass. I need a motion to open the public hearing that was continued.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are in the continued public hearing relative to this special permit. One or more members of the committee wished to continue the public hearing pending the application for a special permit for a drive-through by the applicant. At our last city council meeting, the applicant did file for a special permit for the drive-through. At that time, at our last meeting, we had continued it to this meeting to see what the will of the applicant was.
Just by way of clarification, an explanation as to why we were unable to have the application filed in time to have it published and perhaps heard at this meeting. It was the requirements of your ordinance
Right.
would have to be done, and we also recognize, even though the ordinance doesn't require that a traffic impact study be done and filed along with the application with the city clerk, that it is something that has to be reviewed by planning and your committee as well as the council before that can be allowed. And we only today received the traffic impact study. It hasn't even been reviewed by my office yet to get in. So we hope to file it either late this week or early next week. And then we will be ready to move forward with the other drive-through application as well.
Right, because we did recognize when we received the application that it would have to be advertised, and there were those other steps to be taken.
Right.
So that rather than looking at them together, I mean, it's up to the committee how they want to recommend it. They kind of go hand in hand. The committee could recommend to approve the non-conforming structure in light of the fact that the permit is being sought for the drive-through, or we could leave it and continue it. I would have to check with Ryan. I would think if he advertised it tomorrow, we should be able to make it for the next meeting, right? Time-wise?
I don't
Do we have
believe-
time, or do we have to go to the next month?
It's 14 days, not in
Be
the
too
second
tight?
publication, not closer than 7 to the actual hearing date, I believe. So I don't know that you could do that depending
So
on
we'll
what.
probably have to go to January.
Well,
But anyway, that, Ryan will work out with you in terms of,
I'm happy either way your committee wishes to go with the issue. If you want to act on the alteration to pre-existing non-conforming structure now, or to have it all heard together, which probably makes some sense, that you're going to have the impact from the drive-through, all the information that's there with that, to sort of put it all in a complete package.
right, so why you hear me thinking out loud a little bit is if we continue this, we have to continue it to a date and time certain. So I'm trying to make sure we don't end up with it still separated.
I could suggest this to you to make it easier so you don't have to guess when the publication was going to be. If you were to continue this hearing to your next session on the 11th,
And we can just
and
keep
then at
rolling
that
it.
point, we hopefully will know when the drive-through special permit is scheduled to be heard, and then it could be continued at that date.
That sounds reasonable, and that way it'll stay in front of us, things, so it won't get buried.
I just have one question, because I know that we had this as a communication on our last agenda, and we had asked Ryan to begin advertising it immediately so that we could catch them up to one another. It hasn't been advertised at all?
Well, except he couldn't advertise for the drive-through special permit until they asked for it. And it only came to the city council at our last meeting.
What happened, if I
Because they
might,
had background work they had to do.
if I might explain what happened.
Yeah.
We filed the application for the special permit at 1 o'clock on Friday. And the deadline for filing to be included in the next council full agenda was noon. So it couldn't get on your agenda at your last full council meeting because we didn't file it in time to give you the time under your rules as to how long it had to be done. So now it has to go to you. It has to be referred to you, I think, by council anyway. So it's got to get on the agenda of the full council to be referred to ordinance.
But it was before us at our last
We
meeting.
did that, but we just did it last Tuesday, a
Okay.
week ago.
Okay.
Okay, and so all the other ads went in for the hearings that we're having now prior. So that now has to go in.
Right.
That's all. It's,
Yeah, I'm just saying if we had started advertising on the 24th, we would have been able to catch up by our next ordinance committee meeting. And it seems at this point, we have to wait a whole another month.
everybody was off. Everything was
The-
closed.
The problem too with the ordinance is that the applicant is the one who's required to do the publication. So it's not only the city saying, here's the application, and putting it in and then billing us.
Yeah.
This application gets sent to the bank, and the bank has to get it to the paper to get it done. So the short window that you
It was-
might want to use
It was,
in the city doesn't necessarily exist where the applicant is the one who has to do it sometimes.
okay. So if somebody wants to make a motion to continue the public hearing to December 11th, then we can figure it out from there.
Sure.
And if we could say, if you could also agree that at that hearing, there would be a motion made by the committee, barring any unforeseen circumstances, to continue that to a date with the other, that might save us having to bring our people back and the neighbors
Right,
having to come and see.
Right, my understanding about the reason that we continued it was for that purpose.
Right.
So that's totally fine. That's what we're attempting to do, so.
And I don't mind showing up at the hearing because I can bill my clients, but the neighbors may not want to come if they don't have to. And, you know,
Yeah,
Well, it became as we all know, we were here for the discussion.
And to that point, I think that the earliest we'll be able to get both the issues before us at the same time is January 8th.
Yeah.
Because Christmas is the 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Always a
Oh,
Tuesday.
wait, but what are they going to do with city council? Because the 1st is a holiday.
I think it's going to be
Are they going to
Wednesday.
move it to the 8th?
It's probably going to be Wednesday.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's what they did last time, I think.
But there's 5 Tuesdays, so maybe they'll want to bump.
You can do whatever you want.
You know what?
It's not election, I mean, it's not the beginning of a
For the
term,
8th,
it's
and if we
midterm.
need to reschedule it, we could open it and reschedule it to the next week if we have that conflict.
So the motion is to continue the public hearing till January 8th so that we will continue this public hearing and hopefully open the other one on the same night.
And if I could,
Yeah, that's what I understood to be your motion?
Yep.
if I could, real quick,
Counselor McGiverin.
I'm not sure, Counselor, if we have to file something else. The city clerk controls the deadline this week for next week's agenda. The deadline is Thursday at 1.
I don't think there's anything else to file, it's just the advertising.
No, I'm talking about for upcoming, if there's anything else you gotta file.
We filed everything we have to.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
It's just a matter of knowing what.
The notice. Mhm. Okay, so we have a motion to continue this public hearing to January 8th.
I think is it
It's-
close to public hearing?
No, we're continuing this public hearing to January 8th with the hopes that we're also going to be opening up the one on the drive-through. You want to second that?
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this public hearing is continued to January 8th at 6:30.
So just to clarify that, both applications will be heard on January 8th?
That is the goal.
Okay.
Can't say anything for sure till the ads go in.
Thank you very much. And since I won't see
Thank you.
have a nice Christmas.
Yeah.
Have a nice
Thank you.
Christmas and holidays. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
same to you.
Not gonna stick around for the sewer rate discussion?
Thank you for my civics lesson today. I learned a lot.
So do you want to go to 3 or?
Yeah, do
Doesn't matter, it's all
the
the
simple
same
stuff
people.
first. Do the simple stuff first. Come on in.
Then you want to take up item 6, but I don't know how simple that's going to be, but. So is there a motion to take up item 6?
Item number 6.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Filed by Counselor Anderson-Burgos, that the handicap spaces on Ivy Ave be condensed to one space in front of 8 Ivy Ave to be located on the east side of the street, 90 feet north of Dwight Street.
Yes.
So this got sent over to the Disabilities Commission. They said they have
Thank you.
nothing to say on this. But here's the problem. The problem is each handicap space is created by ordinance. And when we undo a handicapped space, it's because it comes to us and says it's no longer needed. We can't just arbitrarily take handicap spaces and put them somewhere else.
Right.
So in order to accomplish what I think you're trying to do, we would have to discontinue the ones you don't want, or whoever wants them doesn't want. You know what I mean? We have to undo each one that isn't wanted.
Right, so these 3 are the ones that are not needed. The one that needs the handicap is right here, is this house here.
Right, but I'm
Legally, I know.
I'm saying the process. is we create an ordinance based on an application process to create the handicap spot. The person who got whatever one's been there forever wants it to be just the way it is. If there's other ones that are not needed, those can be discontinued if they're no longer needed.
Yeah, they're no longer needed.
But we can't just sit here and say, we're taking these, we're consolidating those and moving one.
No, right. So I've walked, this is obviously in my ward. I've spoken to everyone in this building, all right, this entire building, the two houses to the side here, and the people that own this house here, and the people over here. So no one in that general area needs the handicap. So, but the problem that they are having is that there's no room for all their other cars. So that's why it was suggested that we work something out and remove these, have these removed.
Right, so the ones that aren't needed would come through with an order to discontinue the handicap parking space as it is no longer needed for that, whatever ones they are.
Okay.
But I can tell you, one person from that street has approached me and wants the one they've always had forever and ever, wherever it is. And I don't know exactly where it is.
I know which one, it's this one here. It's the one located right in front of 8 at Ivy Ave.
I don't know. But I'm just saying, the person who sought one wants it. If the other additional ones that were approved are not needed any longer, they just need to come to us and then we need to remove them out of the ordinance.
But
Each one.
That's the thing, whoever ordered these, no one in the building ordered it.
Right.
So we don't even know where these came from.
Well, you can file the order that says discontinue the handicap space, whatever the ordinance for it is, no longer needed, if that's what your constituents are telling you. But we have to discontinue certain specific ones in the ordinance.
I think the order, I mean, because the language says condensed, and so I think that you can effectively delete it as long as we get the legal language from the law department. So I don't think we need a new order. I think it's all encompassed in this order. We just need the legal language.
Well, I've never seen one come through this way. Yeah, sure.
Motion to suspend the necessary rules, allow legal to speak.
Please, second.
All in favor? Aye.
I think Rebecca's correct. I think you can just, because it says that handicap spaces on Ivy Ave be condensed to one space in front of 8 Ivy Ave, it's pretty clear that they only want one space on Ivy Ave, which legal form would then take care of the miscellaneous language that's needed to erase anything else that's on there. And it even goes so much further to be located on the east side of the street, 90 feet north of Dwight Street, which indicates to me exactly which space would stay remaining. And I think the
So is that,
engineering department even provided the sample language of what that would look like.
so the impression from at least one of the residents on the street is that this order is causing one of the spaces to be moved. So if that is a misperception, we should clarify it, I guess.
If I may
you may.
speak, sir.
Thank
This
you.
issue came up a couple of months ago when Crystal asked me to go out there and take a look at it, and I think the counselor weighed in as well. The interesting thing, there's 4 entries in the schedule of ordinances right now. There's only 3 handicap spaces actually posted in the field. So what's in the field is what you see marked up here in red, and the space location that is desired is what's marked in blue. So it was if what is desired by the council is to have a single space located where it's shown here in blue, I've provided sample language here to say that the current 4 entries would be replaced with a single entry as laid out on the second page of my memo.
Is there currently a handicap parking space in the blue?
Not where the blue is,
No.
but where the red is.
And then where's the fourth
Correct.
space that you were, because you said there's 3 posts, but 4 entries. So where would the 4th entry be?
I don't recall, it's not physically posted in the field. So it appears in the schedule. There's a lot of things in the schedule that aren't quite out there in the real world. And this is a case where apparently there might have been multiple attempts by the council to codify a space, and it ended up in the schedule twice, perhaps.
Well, so the point that I'm making is that at least one resident on the street perceives that the space that they obtained years ago through ordinance will be moved and does not want it to be moved. And that person specifically came down, sought it, got an ordinance in place. And I don't really think I don't think we should be changing things that we approve for somebody without it being, if the person is using it, even though we've taken off the numbers, we've historically always discontinued them when there is no use for it. I'm just letting you know, I've been specifically told by the person they want the one they got that they have, which is not theirs, but but it exists where it's always been.
How do they have a legal leg to stand on if it's not theirs and we're simply moving it? Then who has the right to say, can we move this handicapped parking space? Basically, it's for 8 Ivy Ave, right? So if it's for 8 Ivy Ave, then it should be located in front of 8 Ivy Ave.
Well, to your point, if the handicap space is not for a person, then it shouldn't be stipulated whose house it goes in front of.
So then the person, the person stepping up saying that it shouldn't be moved shouldn't have to say either, right?
Well,
because that's what doesn't make sense to me. If the person who doesn't want it moved, who wants to leave it there, is basically the person who lives in 8 Ivy Ave.
right.
So this, I'm assuming that this is a person that's reaching out to you saying, no, I don't want it moved. But she's the one that's using it.
Right.
So it'd be closer to her house
Yes.
at 8.
Right.
maybe.
So I don't see why, if she doesn't really have a leg to stand on legally,
Well-
she doesn't own that space, it's a public way, so why don't we just move it?
Why, does she
Why
understand that?
would you move, Counselor McGiverin?
Well, the issue, and this goes a lot further back.
Yeah, it does.
And we've had many a discussion on this one original handicap sign. There's more than one issue. It's not just address. There's driveways, there's curb cuts, there's handicapped people that have to have access closer to a sidewalk, even though it might not be closer to their front door. And all we've ever said was, and we can't give it to one person anymore, is that it is used on a daily basis, so that it doesn't take up a parking spot. It just gives a person with a handicap placard the right to park there. If there's only one person with a handicap placard on the entire street, why don't we just keep the one that's there and it works?
Right, so my understanding, and I won't, I don't want to step on toes, but my understanding is there's at least 2 people, if not more, on that street with handicap placards, which is why we added the handicap spaces.
Right, there's one. There used to be, they moved. The people in the building were the ones that had the handicap, but then they moved. So
Right.
it changed everything. So now they have all of these handicap parking spaces, and the people in the building have been complaining as well. It's not just the people on the right side of Ivy. It's the people across in the building who are saying, why are there so many handicap parking spaces if there's only one handicap parking or a handicap placard?
Right, so my suggestion would be to discontinue the ones that are not needed. They were created to create peace on the street when there were multiple
Right.
demands for handicap spaces. So why don't we just delete the 2 new ones? Instead of creating havoc yet again.
And the other issue that they're having also is that the location of the one that I'm asking to have moved in front of 8 Ivy is the one right here in the corner. They're having trouble getting in and out as well, out of their driveway, which is right here.
Right, and what's right across from 8 Ivy?
There's 2 parking spaces. What do you mean, like right
What's
here?
directly across the street from 8 Ivy?
From 8 Ivy, 2 parking spaces, 2
No,
handicap.
across the street.
The
Directly
building?
across the street from 8 Ivy.
There's a building.
Yeah, what is it? Is it a house? Is it
Oh, no,
multi-housing?
This is a huge building right here. This is the whole building.
Oh, that's across from 8 Ivy?
And they're the ones that are having issues as well. When I went knocking last time, they brought it up to me. They're like, why are there so many handicap parking spaces? And then,
So I'd say fix what's broken, but don't break what's been there for 20 years.
Can you go to the resident at 8 Ivy with the schematic and explain?
She knows exactly what it is, and
Yeah.
she does not want it in front of her house.
right, but she.
But it's the one that she requested, right?
The one she requested is where she requested. It's been there for years.
Right.
So
And it's not located in front of her house, so it's like almost done intentionally.
it was done years ago, and it's.
But intentionally, and that's another, to me, that's a little, how would I say, it's,
Well, let me also just say, if there's a need for a handicap placard, we have our Commission on Disabilities take a look to see if there is driveway parking, and they're looking to make it easier for people to get in and out of their house. So to have a handicap parking space that's not in front of your house makes me wonder if it's even merited at all. So, I mean,
It's in the ordinance. It already went through the process.
but it doesn't mean it can be undone, right?
no, we change ordinances all the time.
Upon a reasonable request, we don't usually change ordinances when the person for whom it was created is objecting. We rarely do that. I mean, I've never in my, I don't know, Joe, do you have recollection of doing that? I mean,
I don't want to go through Ivy Ave again, you know, we spent so many hours on this.
this is why we added all those handicap spaces.
Right, and I listen, to me, if I need a handicap spot, I would like it in front of my house. Does it mean it's necessarily mine? No, but I would rather it in front of my house. Why would I want it in front of my neighbor's house?
Is it in front of anybody's house?
Yes, it's in front of their house.
Neighbor's house.
So when they pull out of this parking lot, when they're going this way to go out that way, their fear is that they're almost hitting this car, and this is all the time. Actually, I think they actually hit it
I
once.
think it's a neighborhood feud.
Yes, exactly. So
And I think the best thing to do is stay out of those.
Councilor Burgos, you talked to the Hatfields, did you talk to the McCoy?
I talked to everyone.
The person who has had this handicap spot, did you talk to her?
Yes.
And what does she want?
She wants that to stay there.
Okay.
Exactly.
Can you show her the schematic, though, so
Huh?
that she has a visual?
Who?
The 8 Ivy Avenue resident, can you show her this schematic so she has a visual?
Yeah, I could show her the schematic,
Yeah. Say,
but it's not going to change what she wants.
it would be nice to at least bring something and say, this is what would be a better fit for the whole neighborhood. Can you do that?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to table so you can talk to the resident?
Yes.
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
She's never going to change her mind.
If I could just add one bit of information just to show how this needs to be cleaned up. Of the 4 Ivy Ave handicap places that are in the ordinance right now, 2 of them are assigned back in the day that we assigned to placards to the same placard. So, you know, there's
There's a lot of redundancy there.
strange stuff there. Yeah.
So that's probably the one that's in the red.
It's,
That, yeah, had confusion about the address.
Never trust that law department, you know?
okay, keep going.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to take up item 7.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ordered that the city assess whether a no parking sign should be placed on either east or west side of Merrick Avenue at Westfield Road. Filed by Councilor Bartley. Oh.
I needed to take a look at a map to understand.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
So for item number 7, the question was a no parking sign on the east or west side of Merrick as it comes into Westfield Road. I took a look at it and took a look at what's happening up and down the street. And Merrick is a bit narrower than some of the other side streets. And I found that in some other side streets that have similar side street widths, 24 to 26 feet wide, where putting a car parked at the end of the street can make visibility difficult, There are already no parking signs going up and down the corridor on Westfield Street, so it would seem to make sense to be consistent that, again, when the street is narrower, where it's more difficult to see, that, you know, there's a reason to put a no parking sign at the end of the street. And typically what I found was it was typically only on one side of the street, not on both sides of the street.
Okay. Motion to adopt the recommendations from the engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to item 8. Motion to take up?
Motion to take up item number 8.
Second, all in
Second.
favor, aye?
Aye.
Ordered that a sign be placed on both sides of Monroe Street prohibiting large trucks from using it as a pass-through. Residents have expressed that this creates a danger for children and that one truck also damaged a power line leading up to a resident's house.
So I handed out a copy of a figure also to give you an idea of where Monroe Street is. It connects onto Dwight Street. If you look at the map that I handed out, the larger scale one, it's that kind of U-shaped roadway in the center of the sheet. So the location that's in question is Merrick is what comes in off
Monroe.
Monroe comes in off of St. Jerome.
Yep.
And takes a right and then loops up into Dwight.
Yes.
And it appears that the concern is with truck traffic possibly, instead of going all the way up to Dwight, taking a right-hand turn and looping around. Councilors may remember a little while ago we had a discussion of truck restrictions on another street, and we had the issue of where the detour would take a driver outside of the community. You would need the approval of the adjoining communities or the impacted communities. That would not apply here because the truck restrictions would exist entirely within the city of Holyoke. So from a locational standpoint, it's feasible. There is an alternate route, which is just continue straight down St. Jerome without taking the detour onto Monroe. That's feasible. The other things then you have to start looking at is there a need because there's a significant enough volume of truck traffic, and do you meet the warrant for that? And what Mass DOT says that they want to see at least 5 to 8% of the vehicle traffic be truck traffic. If it's one truck out of 100 trucks or out of 200 trucks, it doesn't warrant putting that type of restriction. If it's a significant enough volume, it might warrant that level of restriction. You can also try to make a case for it if there's something unique about the geometry of the roadway or the structure of the roadway that's not suitable for heavy truck traffic. But Monroe is really constructed no differently than any other city street. So really the one you'd have to focus on is there a significant enough volume of truck traffic. If you meet that warrant, then Mass DOT requires an engineering study. And we can do much of the engineering study in-house. One of the things that they do look at, though, is that we have to be able to quantify the number of commercial vehicles over 2.5 tons of weight. The vehicle counter equipment that we have is a radar-based equipment. It actually doesn't have tubes across the street. It projects a signal out onto the street to count the vehicles. That does not give us the capability to measure weights of vehicles. So if we were to ultimately go and request Mass DOT approval, we'd have to outsource that portion of the engineering study. What our suggestion is at this point is that we can put our traffic counter out there. We can try to quantify the number of commercial vehicles to see if we even hit that threshold, the 6 to 8%. And if we do, then we can come back to the council and see if, if the council is still concerned, we could move forward with the engineering study and bring somebody in from the from outside to do the more detailed traffic counting if necessary. The other thing you may want to consider is if the concern is just nighttime traffic, and I suspect it's not, but if it is primarily nighttime traffic, Mass DOT is much more willing to give those truck restrictions, no truck traffic from 8 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that. That doesn't require as in-depth of a study.
Then it becomes all about enforcement.
Right.
Just ask the people on Homestead Ave.
Any questions? It's Juan's order, so if he had any questions, I'll let him go first. But
Yeah, so what came to my attention when I was in that
Microphone.
area. Oops, is it on? Sorry. What was brought to my attention was that a power line was taken out. And so the residents in that area had no power for quite some time. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was in the winter.
Okay.
I think. And so that right there, I thought that was, and not to mention, when I'm in that area, there are a lot of children that live in that building and the building adjacent to it. So there's constantly children running back and forth. So it's just, it's not a safe, for anyone. That was my concern.
Okay.
Or the residents.
Thank you. So I'm having a hard time understanding why anybody would cut through.
Yeah, I mean,
because it seems like, more work to go make a turn and then another turn. I mean, I don't know how accurate this map is, but it does look like it does get quite a bit narrow at the end of St. Jerome, and I don't know if this because the sidewalk comes out a bit. Again, I don't know if this is an accurate.
It's reasonably accurate, yeah.
So I don't know if making some adjustments to the sidewalk would help the drivers to go straight. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, can you understand why people would be making this cut through?
I think we had the same question. So I don't have any firsthand knowledge of how often it's used, if it's used a lot or used very little. If a wire was taken down by a truck that met the height restrictions, the problem probably, quite honestly, wasn't the wire. I mean, it wasn't the truck, it was the wire.
Probably hanging.
So although it's unfortunate, wires are supposed to be at least the 14.6 feet high so the trucks can go under there. Even if you had a truck restriction, you can't prohibit trucks from delivering goods, et cetera, to that street. So it doesn't mean you can say there's never ever any trucks that go down there. If there's
it would be weird though, because it's all houses.
Right.
So
But
there
there's
would be
still-
no reason other than a cut through for the truck to go that way.
Right.
Because
So
it's all residential.
I think our impression was we're not quite certain why anybody would use it. But apparently they must to some extent.
I mean, you
Maybe
could get
deliveries?
some truck deliveries of furniture.
Deliveries?
I've
Yeah.
seen that happen to houses in my neighborhood.
Really?
Yeah.
But that
But
would
it-
be
but it's
intermittent.
very
and it wouldn't be a
infrequent.
high volume.
And to Bob's point, the fact that a truck took down the wire, you would think it's more the wire's fault than the truck's fault. And that it happened now. We don't know when the wire was installed, but it could have been years before a truck went down the street to take that wire down, and it was just waiting all that time.
So we think it could be worth that first step, which is to do the counts ourselves.
See
if there are any trucks that go down the street on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If we don't find any, we'll likely come back and recommend that it's not worth investing money in bringing in outside equipment to do the full-blown study.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah.
And then I just one more point as a follow-up. I know you're talking about outsourcing or contracting for that other counter that has the volume measures. But I'm just wondering, do we have relationships with like neighboring communities where like East Hampton might lend us that equipment and we could continue to do that work in-house? I mean, is that such a thing? I mean, we do share some resources between neighboring communities.
My experience has been that most communities don't have the equipment that we have.
Okay, so we're
most
more.
times they
That's
hire
interesting.
outside firms to do traffic counts for them.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
So, do you want to make a motion?
Motion that we
Wait, there's anything else?
direct the DPW to conduct the engineering study on the traffic counts.
Second it.
The traffic count, right?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. And then table it in the meantime, right?
You want to table it pending the result, and then
Pending the
when we
result,
get
yeah.
it, we'll
Yeah.
figure out what to do.
Perfect.
Yep.
So,
Second it.
all in favor?
Yep.
Aye, so that's tabled.
All right.
I did want to note that I did receive your correspondence as it pertains to the Solurge application.
okay.
So we do have that for the
And
jacket. So
I will say that my impression was the same as the planning department. Everything that we asked for, they responded to.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure you knew I did have it.
Good, okay,
I
thank you.
think I had emailed you back, but everything's been happening quickly. Okay. All right, so back to our favorite topic. I'll accept a motion to take up
Motion
the
to
next
take up item
item.
number 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this is a public hearing, order that the city council amend the sewer rate ordinance adjusting the deficit in the sewer budget. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the public hearing is open on this. My order isn't on this agenda, but I did file an order that we hear an update from the collections as part of the public hearing process, so we can understand how that's impacting on the deficit. Well, I was just asking where you were. This is yours.
I was watching you on TV.
Do you have that information? I know that Bellamy had circulated something towards the end of the summer, but do we have any updated information?
The only, I can provide anecdotal, I don't have hard numbers with me on our collections, but our collections and cash flow have been very good this year because of the sewer shutoff program that we've been doing with the Holyoke Waterworks. And today we looked at what would our lien list be, because we're starting to get into the last round of, we typically send out a letter before we lien a property, notifying people that their unpaid sewer balance will be placed on a lien. So in the past few years, we've been leaning approximately $400,000 each year. And we ran it today, and if we were to lien today, we would lien $77,000.
It's just too bad it took us so long to get that going. But better late than never.
So our liens will be less. Looking historically at the monies that we've liened, I think we've collected about 70% of what we liened last year. The year before that, 80%. The year before that, 90% has been collected. And that is accounting for any liens that have been written off. We're not counting that. So it's when we do lien a property, and if we go back, the fourth year, that's the year that we didn't place any liens at all, because there was a hiccup in the software when liens needed to be placed. In the fifth year, we've collected 98% of the money that was liened. So liening is a tool that we have to collect money that's owed. It just doesn't help us in the current fiscal year.
Right, and it's a lot more work.
And it is more work. But the big problem with the sewer rate isn't necessarily a cash flow, but the rate is too low to structurally pay for everything that the enterprise fund is supposed to pay for. And we wind up where we have to make transfers from the general fund to the sewer account every year in order to balance the books. And so while it's great to have an improved cash flow, it still doesn't mean that we'll balance the books at the end of the year. And which is why we're recommending increasing the sewer rate. In September, we were in Ordinance Committee. I had a memo that made, there were two recommendations that we would made. One would be to eliminate the $5 minimum payment, or increase the minimum consumption to 10,000 gallons. And that would, the 10,000 gallons is the minimum consumption that the water department uses. DPW with the sewer, we have a minimum consumption of 2,566 gallons, which has been there for a very long time. And then the second recommendation would be to increase the sewer rate from the $5.40 per 1,000 gallons that it is today to $6.65 per 1,000 gallons.
So if we implemented the first step of eliminating the minimum, so you would pay for all the water that you use in that scenario?
Correct.
Does that have a meaningful impact on the rate?
No. If we did that, we looked at that would affect approximately 5% of the sewer accounts. So 5% of our bills are a $5 minimum because the people consume
Very little.
1 gallon less than
So it's
the
probably
2,000.
single seniors,
So
mostly.
it's single seniors. But the funky thing is with that, the 2,566 gallons, if you use the actual rate, their bill would be, I think it's around $13. But because we have that $5 minimum, that's what their bill is, it's $5. It's not what the true value would be at the sewer rate.
Right, but it's not really going to make a dent
That's not gonna make a dent.
because it's so small.
If you increased the minimum consumption to 10,000 gallons, which is what the water department does, that would affect about 35% of the customers. So 35%.
That would hurt your,
It would. It would mean that they would now be paying the minimum.
Yeah,
When
that would-
before, they weren't paying the minimum. They're paying the minimum on the water, but they're not paying that minimum on their sewer. They're paying for what they actually use. We looked at other communities in the area, and there's not a whole lot of communities that have a minimum charge. And there's no real rhyme or reason on where that minimum charge came from. So some communities, like Amherst, they had a minimum charge of $11.25. In Montague, they have a minimum charge of $114.63. You know, so
And they have it listed as a monetary value as opposed to the gallons?
well, they also have a sewer rate in
minimum.
gallons. So if you don't hit if you don't hit their threshold, you get charged that minimum. But then they do have the sewer rate for above that.
it seems like it's such a small amount of the whole. You know, it doesn't really accomplish anything.
The $5 minimum?
To eliminate it, or to make them pay for each gallon as they go. If you, it would go from 5 to 13.
Right. It's not a big,
I mean, it's not going to fix.
It's not going to fix it, but it
problem.
brings more equity into the system because you're paying for what you're using.
right. It does bring equity because you're paying, as you said, for what you're using.
So then the people who aren't here for periods of time would have no water bill.
Correct.
Unless we adopted the 10K minimum gallon consumption rule. Do we have a lot of people that don't live in the city for periods of time?
You don't have a lot of people on the minimum period.
But that would, if we did the 10,000, there was about 35%
Right?
35% of the customers would be paying the minimum.
Right, but then you're losing money out of the account that you need more money in, right?
No,
Oh, you're getting more.
no, they would be forced to pay the minimum.
Oh, you're saying you would change the minimum to a higher amount, so the fee
Change
would
the-
be greater.
The fee would be greater.
Oh. All right.
I haven't done the math to calculate
That doesn't
exactly
seem
how much.
fair.
Well, that's what the water department does. So if you use 9,000 gallons in your quarter, you get billed for 10,000 gallons. If you use 10,001 gallons in the quarter, you pay for the 10,001 gallon.
What do you think we should do?
Well, I have a question, if I may. So if we increase the minimum consumption to 10,000, are we still looking at the rate of 665? Or if we bring a minimum of 10,000 gallons consumption into the picture, does that allow us to rein in the increase a degree?
It would affect the increase and it would decrease. But then, to speak to the equity of it, I mean, you're asking a third of the sewer customers to pay for more than they actually consume.
That's not fair.
Just another approach, another way some communities look at it is the minimum charge really pays to make the resource available.
The infrastructure.
And there's a fixed cost to that. There's a fixed cost to maintaining it, keeping it operational, and as a minimum, that minimum charge funds that. The additional then funds what you put into the pipe or take out of the pipe.
Right,
For
because
water, are you talking?
the same for sewer, because we still have pump stations, we
Right.
still have sewer pipes, we still have a treatment plant that
We still
needs
have to
be
clean the pipes,
operated.
we still have to maintain the pipes, whether I flush today or don't flush today.
Right.
I have the ability to do so.
There's that base cost.
I think I'm missing something in your explanation about the 10,000 gallon minimum. So up to 10,000 gallons, you just pay a flat rate. This is for water?
For water,
And
yeah.
once you go over that, then you pay for each gallon. Wouldn't it?
No, you're,
But we're not setting the water rates anyway, so.
Right.
That's,
You're always-
that's not our jurisdiction anyway.
the rate is always there. It's just that if you're using, if you're
Less
actually
than
consuming,
10,000.
we're going to bill you for 10,000 because we need to maintain the pump stations and the infrastructure.
And that's what we're doing in the water company now.
Yes.
Okay, so
So
that makes sense.
builds equity across departments.
Inconsistency, I expect it's confusing for customers that sometimes get billed in one manner for water and another manner for sewer.
And we did see that recently with someone who had installed a sprinkler system in their lawn. So they consistently were being billed for their consumption pre-irrigation, which we'll just say is 5,000 gallons, right? And they were being billed by the sewer department at the rate of $5.40 per 1,000 gallons.
Right.
But they were getting billed at the minimum by the water department for 10,000 gallons. They put in the irrigation system, they didn't have a separate meter. They ran their sprinklers, and now their water consumption went up significantly. So now the sewer rate, their sewer bill was actually higher than their water bill for the first time in who knows how long, and they said, something's wrong here. So increasing the minimum, there will be people who now will have to pay more on their sewer than they did on their water. But it's something, we need to do something in order to.
I hear you, but I think, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at fairness. So I think it would be hard to hit people twice. You know, hit them with the rate and hit them with the minimum. You know, because then they're going to get two. Because you're saying if we do anything with these minimums, it's not going to change our ability to, we're not going to be able to lower this rate.
Well, no,
Is that you're recommending?
Right, if we eliminate the minimum altogether and just say.
Pay as you go.
You pay for what you pay as you go. We would need to increase the sewer rate $1.25 in order to balance the books for this year.
And if we create the minimum consumption at 10,000 gallons, what's the increase?
I don't know. But it would be less than $1.25. It's not, I don't think it would be a 25-cent increase.
Would it be half?
No.
So it's
It would still, I would guess maybe around,
10 cents.
no,
Less than
90 cents
$1?
to $1.
I think less than $1 can probably be stomached if we're doing both, but
Well, we also haven't raised the rates in over 10 years. And
Yeah, but you know what? Nobody thinks about that.
it's just the way that, I mean, you know, I'm absolutely in favor of a rate increase. I've been in favor and working alongside of Councilor McGiverin on actually implementing a rate increase, because I think that I understand that we haven't raised it in 10 years and costs have gone up. But to take a two-prong approach, which I still think is merited, I think we need to carve back some of the increase if we're going to require that minimum, just because there's going to be a huge sticker shock, and the impact of that sticker shock along with the minimum consumption is going to, I think, really outrage people.
So we can do that analysis.
I think and if there's a way, in terms of like, you know, perhaps projecting where some of these other collections revenues are coming in to offset some of the rate increase, so that we can keep it down underneath a dollar, I think that's really where we need to go. If we're going to do the 10,000 gallon minimum consumption as well. That's my general sense of where we need to be. And I'm happy to hear what other counselors think at this point.
Well, generally speaking for myself, I'm in favor of paying for what you get. However, if changing that doesn't impact the rate at all, then I think it's creating a lot of angst for no good purpose. So if it has a significant impact on how much we would have to increase the rate, then I'd be in favor of it. I think I'm saying what you're saying. But if it doesn't, then it's not worth it.
Right.
Counselor McGiverin? I knew your hand was coming up.
You did.
I have ESP now.
If I could just say it a little different, but I think we're in agreement, or I think we're going in the right direction. But I've always looked at it a little bit different, and for two reasons. But before I say it, a reminder, and I'm reminding everybody at home too, is, in 1960, when the wastewater treatment plant was built, the city sold the residents short. It didn't take into accountability for combined sewer overflows that this size of this city and the makeup of this city would have, and eventually the Clean Air Water Act would catch up to us. They built it too small, and they didn't separate. And I'm not saying that that time or any time you could separate all the storm drains from all the sewer drains themselves, but that's, as we know, is the problem. Because when the rain comes, we have overflows, and what comes out of our bathrooms goes into the Connecticut River. I don't think anybody I know agrees that that's the right thing to do. We have to clean up the Connecticut River. Now, it's an unfunded mandate. It's a thing we could talk about forever because the federal government has given us some assistance, but essentially it's an unfunded mandate for Holyoke. Whereas back in the 70s and 80s, communities like Worcester were completely paid for by the federal government. Now, we can talk to our congressmen, we can talk to our United States senators, but that's not going to change immediately. We're facing new mandates because when we did Berkshire Street, it's only about 45% of our problem. We still have over 50% of CSOs that have to be addressed. I'm not even going to ask tonight what that tag is, but that dollar tag is coming. The federal government is starting to look at us again, and if we don't do something, we're going to start looking at fines that could break the piggy bank a lot more than it has. So here's the way I look at it: is if you look at the water rate, water's for free. You're not paying for water, right? It's based on usage. You're paying for the water department getting water to your home, quality water that you can drink, use to bathe, use it on lawn sprinkler, use in your pools, use for whatever you want. Wash your car. But it's the distribution of waters that we pay for. And we do have an old system, but our water department has kept up with their rates. The water commissioners set the rate, not the city council, and they do it reasonably, and they've been able to keep up with it, and now they have a bigger plan before us in terms of what the needs are for the next 20 years. When it comes to sewer, it's a little bit different because the meter on our homes is for water. We don't have meters for sewer, what's going out. And people argue, well, I'm not sending the same amount of water out the sewer because of what I use. I used it for the lawn, I used for the pool, and that's true. But we all share the cost of the wastewater treatment plant. And by that I mean is the cost is X. And no matter what happens, the discharge is going to come from our homes, from our businesses, and eventually end up at the wastewater treatment plant. We need to be able to handle it, to treat it, and not to dump raw sewage into the Connecticut River. And there's more than one way to do this. We know what the cost is. We could eliminate the rate and just bill everybody at one rate, at one bill. That's not going to work. I think we all know that. So the second best way to do it is to estimate what the well, we know what the costs are, but to estimate the way homes pay for it by their water usage, and that's what we've done forever. Maybe it's not the fairest, no one's ever gonna say it. The water rate's not the fairest for water consumption, but it works. So what we have to do is figure out a way that we are collecting enough revenue to pay for this enterprise fund. And that's the second problem that the city did, is the water department is not an enterprise fund. They stand on their own. The wastewater treatment plant, somewhere in, I want to guess the 80s, but it might have been in the 90s, the city voted to make it an enterprise fund, which linked it directly to our budget as opposed to the rate. And then only about 10 years ago, we voted that the city council would set the rate by ordinance, not the DPW commissioners by what the needs are for the wastewater treatment plant. There's good and bad to that, and I'm not condemning it, but the bad is 10 years later, we're still arguing about how to do a rate increase when, you know, we now have, and I think it's an average over $500,000 a year, been taken out of the general fund to offset the lack of revenue to pay for what happens at the wastewater treatment plant. That is, you know, we've made a lot about that, but that is unfair to everyone. It is unfair to those of us who are hooked up on a sewer line. It's equally and more unfair to people who don't have sewers. You know, we should not be using tax dollars, property tax dollars that are meant for police department, fire department, DPW, Parks and Rec, and so on, schools, to pay for a wastewater treatment plant deficit. And we've shot ourselves in the foot. I commend both the city council for arm twisting the water department to allow water shut off for delinquent sewer bills. And I commend the DPW and to Mike and his crew for an incredible turnaround over the last 3 or 4 years. You know, we've overcome the delinquent part. You know, there's some bills that will never be paid, but that's people with abandoned property and property that's probably going to be falling or torn down in the future. But the collectibles have been collected at, I think Mike said we're getting close to a 98% rate. Yeah. You know, it's incredible. So now it's our turn. I get the minimum part. I never understood it because I think you want to do what's fair and what's right, and I think the minimum when it was originally created had something to do with what the cable company no longer does, you know, where they gave, you know, a senior discount or a senior, you know, an offset of their bill, a cheaper rate. I think equity is important, but I think we have to be mindful too, and I'm not sure of the answer with the minimum, but I think we just have to make it everything fair. But we need to be fair to everybody and increase the sewer rate soon, because we're in the third quarter. You know, the billing cycle is already gone through. We're not going to make the third billing cycle for the water and sewer. If we're lucky for this fiscal year, we might make the fourth billing cycle. So we're only going to gain a fourth of what we're trying to do by setting a new rate, you know, as soon as possible. And then next fiscal year, we should have all 4 billing cycles for complete advantage of a new rate. But no one wants to see a higher rate, but I think in fairness, I'd rather see it, you know, pay a sewer and a water rate than have it come out of my property tax bill, because we all know how tough it is to keep the operational budget of the city going. Now we've gotten a little better news on our free cash situation, but it hasn't been certified. But they've agreed to look at, you know, when we didn't send out the tax bill for the third quarter, it created a lot of money coming in after July 1. There's a way that we can recoup some of that in terms of last year, and then it essentially becomes free cash.
They're gonna let us accrue it?
Don't know the number yet, but it's better than what we were hearing. But I'm in favor of a rate out of fairness. I'd be really in favor if the federal government said they could help us out a little bit more with some grant money. But you know, Congressman Neal and knows how most of us feel about that, and I think he'd go to bat for us. But you know, that's a difficult task down in Washington these days.
So when you're saying you're in favor of the rate, are you looking at the straight rate increase, or are you looking at a combination of eliminating the minimum and increasing the rate?
I just want to make it really clear. There's three things that are proposed. One is eliminating the $5 minimum. The second thing is the creation of a 10,000 gallon minimum consumption, and then the third thing is the rate. So there's three things at play here.
If anything on the minimum, I'd rather just eliminate the $5 or change the $5, because I think the $10,000 will just cause more confusion
Punitive.
because we don't have meters on sewage. We only have meters on water. So I think that would just be, not just confusion, but I don't think that's the equity we want. However, I mean, if someone, equals a $5 minimum and it's really $13, I mean, I think everybody pays as they go. Eventually, we know how to set the rate.
Okay, so Mike, in terms of being able to do the calculation and come back with what impact one or the other scenarios or both could have on the change from 545 to 665, or hopefully something less, would that be something you could get back to us with in a couple weeks?
If it's at all possible to put it on the agenda for the 11th? Is that our next meeting, or the 18th?
The 11th.
The 11th.
That's why I'm asking if we could have it for 2 weeks, so we can just continue the public hearing for 2 weeks.
I'm gonna work on this tomorrow,
Okay.
so.
Are you here for the sewer rate public hearing that you wanted to speak on it?
Yes.
So if you're here on the sewer rate, just go to the mic. You have to give us your name and address and tell us whatever you want to say about the sewer rate. Because this is a public hearing.
Yeah.
It's on the sewer rate, Odette.
My name is Odette Sapliki. I live in 8 Ivy Avenue. And I was watching the meeting tonight, and I got very upset. So I said, well, I was ready to go to bed, but I put my clothes on, I came back there, and I know Mr. Barkers, whatever his name is, he keep picking on me. You keep harassing me.
We're talking about the sewer rate, though.
We're on
talking about the handicap.
So you have to wait.
Okay, but Odette,
you have to wait.
Here's the thing. We tabled that in committee. We did not do anything with it. We tabled it so that Juan can speak with you directly relative to it and the diagram that we were looking at that I don't think you've seen.
Yeah,
But we can't entertain that discussion here in this public hearing.
Yeah.
It's a different issue.
Okay, we're on a different agenda item. If you want to speak on the sewer rate, we can hear you. Otherwise, you got to talk to Juan separately. Okay?
But I want to talk to everybody, but
But you can't on the mic. You're on a public channel in a public hearing for the sewer rate right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so
because-
you got to get with your ward counselor individually.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I know when he say talk to me, he never did. He lie about
Okay.
that.
Okay, so can you
Keep
get with him
harassing.
separately?
You can smile all you want. It's
Odette,
not right.
Odette,
Yeah.
we have
I'm very
to stop.
upset.
I hear that, but you need to talk separately outside of the chambers and off of television with,
Now? Can I talk to him
after,
now?
when the meeting ends, which we'll be
Okay.
wrapping up shortly.
Okay, when the meeting
Okay.
ends, I can talk to all of you there, can I? No?
You can as
Yes.
people remain available.
I want
But
everybody
we
to
need
be
to
there.
stop talking
Okay.
about it now. Thank you.
I talk after the meeting.
Yes.
I want everybody to be there.
Thank you. Okay, so not seeing anyone in the audience that has comments on the sewer rate, I'd accept a motion to continue the public hearing to December 11th at 6:30 so that we can have time to look at the impact that 1, 2, or 3 options may have.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So the hearing is continued to December 11th at 6:30. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank
Thanks,
you all. We covered